Hey, what's up? It's Cute What If? This side. Today we will be seeing, what if Deku was the reason she didn't give up? Before we move ahead with the FIC, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future what ifs like this. Alana Furedo was born on October 15th in Kawasaki, Japan. She moved to Mizudafu at the age of 6 and now lives there. Her hero name is Inferna, the volcanic hero, and her costume follows a flame motif. Her birthstones are opal, tourmaline, and rose quartz, symbolizing hope and clarity, creativity and insight, and unconditional love. Alana is Japanese by nationality and speaks Spanish as her first language, Japanese as her second, and English as her third. She is a first-year student at UA High, assigned to Class 1A. Her quirk, known as Volcana, is an emitter-type ability that lets her transform Earth into lava and control it as she desires. The quirk does not function in snowy conditions. Despite a difficult childhood, Alana maintains a positive outlook and sees the world as something to adore and care for. She tends to act selflessly, though she sometimes makes selfish choices. She tries to understand villains as victims of circumstance, but she finds that difficult after they harmed innocent people. Her desire to emulate her father, a man she regarded as a true hero, drives her to take risks and act with boldness. She can be reckless but usually regains her composure quickly. As a partner, she is loyal and supportive. She can be clingy at times because she cares deeply, but she also tries to give others the space they need. Alana admits that she sometimes pushes down her own feelings as a reaction to her past. Alana has naturally curly dark brown hair, often worn half up and half down, sometimes secured with a clip or a small red bow. Her eyes are fox-shaped and emerald green with subtle flecks of gold. Her skin is a warm, golden umber that seems to glow in sunlight. She wears multiple ear piercings. She carries a large burn scar on her back that she later covered with a tattoo, a scar over her left eye from an attack by a feral cat, and several small burn marks over her body. She has a full hourglass figure and keeps an active lifestyle. As for preferences, Alana said she preferred cold weather and considered winter perfect. She found spring too warm and expressed that she loved fall for its colors and festive atmosphere. She likes cozy nights in and enjoys wearing her favorite pajamas, which she described as cute and comforting. She also commented that her school uniform was cute but a bit boring and that she needed to get out more and try new things. She enjoyed experimenting with makeup and styles in a playful, low-stakes way. Alana carries the blood type O+, and is willing to donate blood in emergencies when possible. Her motivations are clear: to live up to the example she admired in her father, to protect others, and to find a way to reconcile compassion with the realities of confronting those who do harm. Her strengths include creativity, loyalty, and a warm, optimistic perspective that inspires those around her. Her quirk limits her to combat missions rather than rescue missions. She manipulates molten rock and heat, shaping sharp objects of lava to cut through structures, creating lava from rubble and stone, and directing molten flows with pinpoint accuracy. She can warm herself or others with her body heat. In extreme situations, she can fuse with magma and merge into the earth, and she can form walls and barriers from hardened lava. Her power carries serious drawbacks. It is highly destructive and can bury or destabilize terrain. Water, ice, and cold weather weaken her ability to use her quirk. After returning to her original form following a fusion with lava, her skin may develop visible cracks. She can sustain her maximum strength for only 15 minutes before risking permanent fusion with the earth. With support items, she can extend that limit to about 20 minutes and aid her recovery. Because of the quirk's nature, her body temperature is always very high and she prefers cold weather. When she showers in very cold water, steam often rises before the water reaches her skin. Her ultimate technique, called merge, is not yet perfected and is extremely dangerous. In it, she allows her body to become molten and to move through the earth, taking on a sentient presence within lava and triggering powerful eruptions that can reshape the battlefield. The technique is volatile and difficult to control, with a real risk of causing widespread devastation if misused. She favors using her feet for most techniques, though she can work with hands as well. Her support gear includes gloves to prevent burns, a hero costume made of nylon and cotton, and pockets that hold coals and stones to help regulate and summon heat. Her weapons include large throwing stars forged from cooled lava, standard kunai when needed, and a naginata that once belonged to her father. Her closest friend is Mina Ishido. She counts Denki Kaminari, Katsuki Bakugu, and Momo Yaoyorozu among her best friends. She is close with Kyokujiro. She considers Toru Hagakure, Tsuyu Azui, and Tenya Ida to be good friends. She is friendly with Ojiro Mashireo, Ijiro Kirishima, and others in her circle. She has acquaintances and lighter friendships with people such as Yugi Aoyama, Koji Koda, Mizo Shoji, Ochako Uraraka, Minoru Mineta, and Mirio Togata. Mei Hatsum and Nito Minoma appear in her extended social network in varying degrees of closeness. Some relationships are complicated and shift over time. Her primary romantic interest is Shurhei Kuwaro. Backup interests include Katsuki Bakugu and Hantasiro. Her family includes her mother Kana Virea, who is alive, her biological father Ryuga Suzuki, who is deceased, her stepfather Enji Todoroki, who is alive, and several siblings, Akane Virea, Alec Virea, Kurai Virea, Akari Virea, Kane Virea, Toma Virea, and Raito Virea, all living. She enjoys hot springs, doodling, musicals, singing, dancing, saving people, hanging out and training with her friend group, watching movies, baking, cats, hugs, affectionate gestures, combat training, martial arts, dancing in the rain, stargazing, and action films. She likes makeup and a gothic, vampire-inspired aesthetic. She dislikes singing in front of large crowds, attention-seeking behavior, narcissists, the ultra-rich, heartbreak, any form of abuse or animal cruelty, bullying, the Suzuki name, loud noises, being in physical or emotional pain, seeing her friends sad, and math. Her favorite foods include steamed corn masa parcels, spicy tripe soup, hominy stew, slow-cooked spaghetti meat tacos, shredded slow-cooked meat, grilled salmon, stir-fried noodles with soy sauce, a beef cutlet rice bowl, Japanese-style curry with potatoes, pork, carrots, chives and chicken, pickled vegetables, noodle soup, communal thinly sliced meat hot pot, cherries, tamarind candy, chocolate rice cake, chocolate and mango crepes, various sweets and candies, waffles, ice cream, and chocolate meringue desserts. She particularly loves crepes. She dislikes onions, sushi, overly sweet foods, and anything without seasoning. She favors any shade of red after a stranger once told her it suited her, and she usually dresses in black and red. She dislikes blue because it brings back painful memories. Her hobbies include reading, singing, writing, and listening to music. Her talents include singing, baking, sleeping, and crafting small cooled lava figures and animals when she is able to solidify molten material safely. Her greatest fears are the fear of being alone, the fear of being forgotten, claustrophobia or fear of tight spaces, and fear of the ocean. Strengths included persuasion, perseverance, martial arts, determination, and professionalism. Alana's roundhouse kicks were famously high. She was also unexpectedly good at flirting. Her perseverance and ability to stay focused made her stand out. Her weaknesses were the mention of her father, a fear of fire pokers, the pain of losing people, difficulty asking for help and communicating, impulsiveness, and a tendency to overthink. Pet peeves included loud chewing, snoring, disorganization, people who walked slowly, being late, strangers standing too close, smelly food in public, and people standing in the middle of a busy hallway. Bad habits included picking at scars, recklessness, constantly checking the time, and bouncing her knees. Early life. Alana's early life began with what seemed like perfection: 2 loving parents, siblings, and a home without immediate worries. Her parents had met when her father, Ryuga, had just graduated from UA and her mother, Kana, was close to graduating high school. Kana had been persistent in pursuing Ryuga. Although he had initially rejected her, she left for Mexico to continue her studies. During that time, Ryuga was trapped in a loveless court marriage and suffered ridicule and infidelity. When Kana returned after completing her studies, she pursued Ryuga again. Their bond grew, Ryuga divorced his wife, and he and Kana married. For a time, their marriage was happy and loving. That peace was shattered when Ryuga later died after an attack that had been staged to look like a villain assault. The circumstances involved betrayal within their own circles, and the family never fully recovered from the shock. Alana was 6 when her father died. A year later, when she was 7, an ex of her mother's attacked their family. The attacker wounded Kana and several of the children. Alana was among those who survived. During the aftermath, Kana was briefly declared dead, a statement that would later prove untrue. The children were sent to live with their paternal grandparents. Life with their grandparents was difficult. The woman who acted as their grandmother was not the children's biological grandmother, and she directed harsh treatment at the Viraya siblings. On one occasion, before Alana's quirk activated to protect her, the woman struck her with a poker, leaving a burned patch on her back and several lasting scars. The siblings tried to run away, but Alana, afraid and protective of her baby brother, stayed and endured years of mistreatment. Middle school. Alana was homeschooled in etiquette, arts, mathematics, and other subjects within the affluent Suzuki household. She had to uphold appearances and spent time straightening her hair until her grandfather, who had rarely paid attention, remarked that he missed her little curls. After that comment, she stopped straightening her hair and began caring for it differently. The abuse she suffered shifted from physical to verbal, but the emotional impact remained. Becoming a hero. From childhood, Alana had watched heroes on television and at public events, often thinking of her father. After his death, she resolved to become a hero herself, to make him proud and to help people around the world. She developed her quirk at about 5 years old and later earned a place at UA. Once she was admitted, despite her grandmother's protests, she grew more confident and began to stand up for herself. Other details. Alana's eyes had an almost magnetic quality. She found solace in opera and often listened to it to calm herself. She slept comfortably with a bonnet, a sleep mask, and satin sheets and pillowcases. She had a black cat named Casey. Singing was a passion. If she had not become a hero, she imagined herself on Broadway. She secretly enjoyed reading dramatic romance novels and loved Mexican food, wishing she could spend one more summer in Mexico with her maternal grandmother's memory. She continued to live with her grandparents but longed to be reunited with the rest of her family. She stayed fluent in Spanish through reading and watching Mexican films and took vocal lessons. Alana tended to embrace the world with open arms. After becoming a hero, she also pursued modeling. Her mother had called her Little One when she was the smallest of her siblings. As they reunited over the years, that nickname evolved into Crazy Girl. Her favorite scents were wisteria and roses. She enjoyed both giving and receiving comfort, and she liked wearing red lipstick. Alana was a quadruplet, the second-born. Her quirk and its association with lava often reflected her passionate, assertive, and sometimes unforgiving nature. To many, though, her outward warmth and striking features suggested a softer side. Alana's words and beliefs. Alana often reflected that it did not matter who her father had been, what mattered was how she remembered him. She believed that, at times, chaos could be a useful ally. In tense moments, she sometimes made curt remarks to cope with loss. She declared that if she were an empress, the one she loved would be the only man worthy to be her emperor. She admitted that she felt incomplete without certain people in her life and would urge others to stop worrying and leave matters to her when she felt ready to take charge. She said that she had needed a hero, so she became one. After long PRDS in darkness, she had almost forgotten the beauty of the moon and appreciated it anew when she could. She liked to say that there was a shade of red for every woman and insisted she would never go anywhere without making a statement. Alana credited her mother with giving her drive and her father with giving her dreams. Described herself as more of a puppeteer than a player. At times she confessed simply that she wanted her sister. She observed that in her cat's eyes everything belonged to him. She allowed herself to admit that forever was a long time, but she would not mind spending it with someone she cared about. A ragged voice begged for food, insisting they would die without it. A dreamer spoke quietly that they had been born to chase sunsets. A friend implored the one who had turned to villainy to abandon that path, urging that they could find the others and share the family dinner they once had. Silence settled over them, the moment charged with longing and the hope of reunion. Name, Melanie Acua. Age, 15. Sexuality, demisexual. Height, 5 feet 1 inch, 154 centimeters. Birthday, September 20th. Star sign, Virgo. Her hero name is Riptide. Her motto was that still waters run deep. Melanie Acua possesses a water-based quirk she wields with quiet precision. Though she rarely speaks and shows little emotion, her presence on the battlefield is like the ocean at rest, serene and steady until it surges. Personality. Melanie walks through the world like a still lake, quiet, unreadable, and always observing. She rarely expresses what she is feeling. Her default demeanor is calm and stoic, giving the impression that nothing ever truly rattles her. It is not that she lacks emotion, but rather that she has mastered the art of internalizing. Her silence often speaks louder than words, and when she does speak, it is blunt and unadorned. This can lead others to misjudge her as cold or uncaring. In truth, Melanie is simply cautious and guarded because of past hurts she does not talk about. She does not trust easily, but she is fiercely loyal to the few who manage to break through her shell. Her kindness is quiet but powerful. She watches out for others in subtle ways, offers protection without asking for recognition, and holds her friends to high standards because she believes they are worth the effort. She avoids petty drama and small talk, preferring silence, thoughtful conversation, or solitude. Despite her introversion, she has an ironclad sense of justice, and if she sees someone she cares for in danger or distress, she will not hesitate to step in no matter the cost. Her quiet nature belies an inner fire, and once someone earns her trust, they will have a steadfast ally. Nicknames. Alana calls her Mel. At first Melanie found it annoying because Alana's brightness clashed with her quiet, but over time the nickname became a small comfort. It represents the first real bond she allowed herself to build at UA, and though she never admits it aloud, hearing it makes her feel seen in a way she is not used to. Melanie believes only Alana can call her that. She cannot explain why and simply lets her. Her mother used to call her Water Lily, as a tender nickname, a symbol of something that grows quietly in still water, elegant and resilient. Those whispers came during bedtime and while her mother brushed her hair. Even now Melanie will not speak about those moments, but she keeps a small carved lily pendant hidden inside her uniform. Her mother used to tell her that water lilies bloom in the quiet, even in the dark. That memory remains her softest. Status: Hero in Training. Melanie Acua is officially registered as a hero in training under UA High School's rigorous program. Despite her quiet demeanor and emotionally closed-off exterior, her potential as a combatant and support-type hero is undeniable. Her mastery over water, and eventually ice, places her among some of the most adaptable and tactically sharp students in her year. While she does not seek attention or praise, her stoicism and sheer effectiveness in crisis scenarios have begun to draw notice from pro-heroes who specialize in rescue, crowd control, and stealth-based missions. Instructors describe her as unshakable under pressure, and Principal Nizu has quietly marked her as a student to watch. Class placement: UA High Class 1B. Though many believed her cold, aloof personality would fit naturally into Class 1A, Melanie was placed in Class 1B by faculty recommendation. The logic was that her skill set leans toward controlled team tactics, adaptive terrain use, and mid-range support, all traits Class 1B is known to nurture deeply. There were whispers among students that Aizawa had requested she be in 1A, recognizing a spark in her reminiscent of a young prodigy, but Principal Nizu placed her in 1B for balance and perhaps a bit of amusement. Melanie made no complaint. She thrives in quiet observation, and among Class 1B's often overlooked but capable roster, she blends in well for now. Appearance: Melanie stands at 5 feet 1 inch with a slender, graceful frame that belies the strength and power contained within her. Her pale skin gives off an almost ethereal glow, smooth and delicate, yet it contrasts with the quiet fierceness that radiates from her. Despite her small stature, there is a presence about her that commands attention without her seeking it. Her calm energy draws people in without a single word. Her hair was once long and jet black, almost reaching her waist, typically half tied up with the other half flowing freely in homage to her mother. Those strands gave her an air of maturity and anchored her to the past. Everything changed after a pivotal fight when her emotions finally caught up with her. In the heat of that battle she cut her hair, the strands falling away as remnants of a past she was ready to leave behind. At first it felt like loss, but over time she began to see the change differently. The shorter, lighter style suited her more. It was cleaner, freer, and easier to manage. No longer weighed down by length, Melanie began to feel lighter and more herself. Her new cut frames her face with sharper angles, hair now ending just above her shoulders in soft layers that retain a touch of elegance. It feels aligned with the person she is becoming, a fresh version of herself no longer bound by past expectations. The transformation in her appearance reflects a quiet shift in her heart. She is shedding layers of an old identity and embracing who she truly is becoming. Her blue eyes still carry a cool tone reminiscent of the ocean depths. They remain calculating and distant, yet now there is clarity and a new resolve born of self-awareness and strength. When she glances in the mirror, she no longer sees what she was. She sees who she is now, a person at peace with her choices. She keeps her face mostly natural, preferring minimal makeup. A small, faint scar along her cheekbone serves as a reminder of past battles and lessons learned. She no longer hides it, no longer sees it as a flaw, but rather as a part of who she is, the person who faced her fears and came out stronger. Melanie's hero costume evokes the ocean's depth and motion with a palette of deep navy, teal, and seafoam, accented in soft silver and pearlescent highlights. The centerpiece is a lightweight, tunic-style top that moves like water-smooth, translucent, and responsive to light. The fabric graduates from darker blues at the shoulders to pale sea green at the hem, fitting close at the torso and flowing freely from the waist to allow full range of motion for her water-based abilities. Long, airy sleeves taper to fitted cuffs at the wrists, where silver bands add a touch of refined practicality. She wears delicate, wave-shaped silver pauldrons over her shoulders that provide subtle protection without bulk, their pearlescent sheen suggesting reverence more than heavy armor. Elbow guards echo seashell curves and remain lightweight to preserve agility. Her lower half is clad in a short, asymmetrical skirt cut to mimic the tide. It drifts and shifts with every movement and splits along one side for ease in combat. Silver thread hems the fabric, lending a refined finish. Her knee-high boots appear almost liquid in texture, with a soft teal glow and water-activated grips on the soles to maintain balance on slick surfaces. A thin, flowing belt of ethereal, liquid-like material rests at her waist, capable of holding and releasing small amounts of water to aid her in battle. Coral and pearl charms hang from it, reinforcing her bond with the sea and serving as a focal point for her powers. Delicate silver wristlets patterned with waves and seafoam crown both arms. Small gemstones embedded in them sparkle like drops of sunlight on water and intensify when she channels her quirk. The overall design balances grace and practicality, reflecting the ocean's fluidity while retaining the protection needed of a hero. Silver and pearl details suggest a divine connection to sea deities and water spirits, framing her abilities as both natural and transcendent. Water-responsive elements in the belt, wristlets, boots, and other accents amplify her control and emphasize her affinity for movement and flow. This ensemble also marks an internal shift for Melanie. The subtle divine motifs and the flowing materials symbolize her letting go of the past and embracing her potential. The costume is not only a tool for battle but a representation of growth. Light, agile fabrics allow her to move across the field like a breeze over waves, carrying the calm confidence of someone no longer weighed down by old fears. In her civilian life, she favors an effortlessly cool, comfortable style that quietly references her ocean connection. Soft blues, teals, and whites form the base of her wardrobe, grounded with earthy neutrals like beige and light gray. She often wears an oversized, loose t-shirt in pastel blue or faded teal, breathable and relaxed, bearing a minimalist wave motif that is meaningful but understated. Loose, high-waisted linen pants in pale neutrals provide comfort and a gentle, wave-like silhouette. She frequently rolls the cuffs for a personal touch. Simple canvas slip-ons in white or soft gray suit her busy days, occasionally detailed with a small seashell or wave emblem. On cooler days, she throws on a light gray hoodie or a cozy teal cardigan, oversized and comforting after training sessions or long shifts. A single accessory, a silver necklace with a small turquoise stone or wave-shaped pendant, rounds out her casual look and quietly ties her everyday self to the sea she channels as a hero. The necklace is delicate and subtle, offering a quiet personal connection to Melanie's quirk without drawing attention. Small stud earrings, simple and understated in silver or pearl, match her minimal approach to life. A simple silver watch with a soft seafoam green leather band sits on her left wrist, practical and unobtrusive while tying back to her connection to the water. Her casual civilian outfit conveys a relaxed, effortlessly chic vibe with ocean-themed touches that remain grounded and functional. The overall impression is comfort and style in balance, reflecting the calm, stoic nature she carries and allowing her to blend into normal society. Pajama set, soft, ocean-inspired comfort. Color palette of muted blues, teals, and soft grays reflects a serene, peaceful take on the ocean. The pieces are breathable and cozy, designed for rest and recovery after days of training or duty. Top. Melanie wears a loose, oversized sleep shirt in pale blue or grayish teal made of cotton or soft modal. The three-quarter sleeves add warmth without feeling heavy. A small wave or seafoam swirl pattern near the hem or cuffs subtly references the ocean. Bottoms. For warmer nights, she prefers soft, loose sleep shorts in light teal or washed blue with a small seashell or delicate wave accent near the waistband. For cooler evenings, she chooses loose, cropped pajama pants in matching grayish teal or pale blue with a relaxed elastic waistband for comfort. Footwear. When she wants extra warmth, she slips on fuzzy, ocean-inspired slippers in seafoam green or light gray shaped like friendly sea creatures. They are cozy and cute without being fussy. Blanket. She likes a cozy knitted blanket with an ombre that shifts from deep blue to pale aqua, mimicking ocean depths. It is soft and inviting, perfect for unwinding. Accessories. A small ocean-themed sleep mask and a subtle ocean-scented candle complete her bedtime ritual, creating a calming atmosphere. Overall, Melanie's pajamas emphasize simplicity, comfort, and a gentle connection to the sea, helping her feel peaceful and at ease. Formal gown, Ocean Queen elegance. Color palette of deep navy, aqua blue, soft teal, and pearl white is inspired by the sea's depths and surface, with subtle gradients and a luminous quality. Bodice. The strapless, fitted bodice tapers at the waist to create an elegant hourglass silhouette. Silk satin and shimmering chiffon give the fabric a gentle glow. Wave-like embroidery traces the edges, and the colors transition from deep navy at the top into aqua and teal. Skirt. The floor-length A-line skirt is made of layered chiffon and organza, giving it a weightless, water-like movement. Ombre layers fade from deep navy to lighter aqua and soft teal, while fine pearlescent beadwork along the edges suggests seafoam bubbles that catch the light. Train. Slight, sweeping train follows behind her, flowing with a graceful rhythm reminiscent of waves rolling to shore. Back detail. The low back is refined with delicate lace in a ripple pattern tracing the spine. A pearlescent silk ribbon at the small of her back ties into a neat bow, adding a refined finishing touch. Sleeves. Optional for a softer silhouette, translucent chiffon sleeves drape from the shoulders to the elbows, billowing gently and echoing the gown's fluid lines. The sleeves faded from a soft teal at the shoulders to clear, soft white at the wrists, and the ends of the sleeves were adorned with tiny water droplet-like crystals for an ethereal touch. Melanie wore simple ocean-themed jewelry, pearl earrings and a silver necklace with a delicate seashell pendant to represent her connection to the sea and her origins. Sometimes she tucked a small silver hairpin shaped like a starfish into her hair, subtly incorporating her quirk into her formal attire. She chose NDE or silver sandals with a low heel so she could move gracefully without the restriction of traditional high heels. The gown emphasized understated elegance, drawing inspiration from the ocean's depths, the serene yet powerful pull of the tides, and the way water moves. It was designed to let Melanie move freely, like the water that flowed through her quirk, while still offering the refined beauty and grandeur of formal wear. The outfit projected calm confidence through graceful lines and subtle detailing. Aika Akua, Melanie's mother, was gone, but her influence remained. From the moment Melanie was born, Aika's love for her had been unwavering and boundless. Aika had been more than a mother. She had been a guide, a protector, and a safe harbor. Their relationship was built on a deep emotional connection, warmth, and a quiet understanding. Even as a child, Melanie had been drawn to her mother's gentle strength and had found comfort in the calm way Aika handled life's chaos. Aika never pushed Melanie to be anything other than herself. She encouraged curiosity, admired quiet determination, and always spoke with patience and understanding. Whether helping with small tasks, reading bedtime stories, or taking peaceful walks on the beach, Aika made ordinary moments feel special. Melanie adored her mother and often tried to emulate the way Aika moved through the world with grace and kindness. Aika's gentle yet powerful quirk, the ability to control fire, fascinated Melanie, who watched in awe as her mother moved through the flames to warm or help others. Aika never boasted about her abilities. She taught that true strength came from intent rather than magnitude. Aika's love for the ocean was something she shared deeply with Melanie. Every summer they spent hours by the shore, walking barefoot in the sand, collecting seashells, and watching waves crash against rocks. Those trips were a way for Aika to teach Melanie about life, calm and peaceful one moment, unpredictable and turbulent the next. Aika told Melanie that she should be like the ocean, strong when needed, soft when it mattered, and always moving forward even through the storms. Those moments shaped Melanie's view of the world. Her mother's words stayed with her, providing strength and wisdom during uncertainty. Aika urged her to find balance and taught that emotions, like tides, could be unpredictable but should not be allowed to take control. One of Aika's greatest lessons was how to express emotion without being overwhelmed by it. She taught Melanie to channel feelings into action, to let emotions fuel inner strength rather than dominate decisions. Aika listened, guided, and also encouraged Melanie to trust her own instincts and make choices independently. Their connection went beyond guidance. It was an emotional bond that only a mother and daughter deeply in tune with each other could share. As Melanie grew, Aika was often her rock, the person she trusted completely. There were countless nights when Melanie rested her head on her mother's lap and spoke of hopes, fears, and dreams while Aika soothed her. Aika saw potential in Melanie long before Melanie recognized it herself. She reminded Melanie that she did not have to be anyone else and that she was enough just as she was. On Melanie's birthdays, they stood together at the water's edge and watched the horizon. Aika told her that she would be like the tide that came and went but would always return stronger than before. When Aika passed away, a hole opened in Melanie's heart. Aika had been the center of her world, showing her the beauty of life and the importance of kindness, love, and strength. Without her mother, Melanie sometimes felt adrift. She kept her grief guarded, a habit shaped by Aika's quiet resilience, but she carried her mother's lessons deeply. The power of the ocean, the beauty in stillness, and the resilience to rise after storms became core parts of Melanie's identity. Aika's death, while devastating, became a source of resolve for Melanie and motivated her to protect others and pursue heroism. In many ways, Melanie came to embody what Aika had stood for: calm in chaos, strength rooted in compassion, and quiet heroism. Aika's legacy lived on in everyday choices. Melanie's stoic composure echoed her mother's memory, and her determination to keep moving forward honored Aika's teachings that power should be used for good. To keep that connection close, Melanie wore a small seashell pendant that Aika had given her on her 4th birthday. In her quietest moments, she would hold the pendant and feel a sense of peace. It was a reminder of everything Aika had represented: love, strength, and an unwavering belief in doing what was right. Shin, Melanie's father, was a man shaped by villainy. His water-based quirk was powerful, versatile, and inherently dangerous. Though Melanie inherited the same ability, the path he chose could not have been more different. He had spent his life using his quirk to manipulate and control rather than to protect. In the early years, Shin's relationship with Melanie had been distant. He was present physically but often absent emotionally. Their connection was practical rather than warm, bound by blood and shared power rather than affection. Melanie had been closer to Aika. Aika's fire-based quirk and compassionate nature made her the emotional core of the family, while Shin's cold demeanor kept him apart from his daughter's life. Shin never understood Melanie's desire to use her powers for good. He viewed his quirk as a tool to dominate others, while Melanie sought to use hers to help and heal. That fundamental difference in values was one of the main divides between them. Where Shin saw control and force, Melanie saw order and safety. Though their abilities appeared similar on the surface, they reflected opposing approaches to life. When Aika died, the fragile bond between father and daughter fractured completely. The loss left an indelible mark on both of them, and they responded in starkly different ways. Shin withdrew deeper into his villainous work, losing himself in that role. Melanie was sent to live with relatives, and without her mother's warmth she changed. Aika's teachings hardened Melanie's resolve. Her desire to protect others solidified as she grew older, always under the shadow of that absence. After Aika's death, Shin's emotional coldness became a shield. He had lost his anchor and, believing detachment to be survival, applied the same distance to Melanie. He did not want to be a hero or to guide her. Yet beneath the calculated exterior, his protective instincts remained. He watched from the shadows, silent and strategic, ready to intervene if necessary. His protectiveness was never expressed through warmth but through an unspoken vigilance. Melanie and Shin therefore lived on opposite sides of the same fault line. Melanie pursued heroism, channeling both her father's water-based skill and the moral influence of her mother. Shin embraced villainy and saw his power as a means to control. Neither spoke often of their differences, but both understood that Aika's death had forced them onto different paths. Still, the shared grief created a quiet, complicated bond. Each would never completely turn their back on the other. In the end, Shin's relationship with Melanie remained distant but not absent of care. Though he rarely expressed it, he would have been willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for her. Melanie, despite her anger at his choices, would never abandon him entirely. The Acua family legacy of strength, power, and resilience continued to shape them even as they walked separate roads. Ryo Acua, Aika's twin brother and Melanie's uncle, had been the relative Melanie went to live with after her mother's death. He was never a warm figure, and the loss pushed him into deeper isolation and bitterness. Ryo had always kept an air of coldness. While Aika had been softer, Ryo harbored darker emotions that the tragedy exaggerated. In the years before the accident, Ryo's villainous tendencies were not entirely hidden. After Aika died, his grief turned quickly into resentment. He blamed Melanie for the tragedy, convinced that her survival was a cruel twist of fate that robbed him of a bond he could no longer share. The loss of his sister consumed him. The grief that had once been muted beneath the surface flared into anger and distance. Their relationship was tense and estranged. Ryo retreated into secrets and isolation, while Melanie navigated a life shaped by the memory of Aika and the opposing influences of her father and uncle. The grief they shared had fractured family ties, leaving each of them to carry the past in different ways. Despite the distance, the memory of Aika remained the heart of the family's story. It defined their choices, their loyalties, and their wounds. The Acua household had become a place of divided legacies. A father who used his gift for control, a daughter who strove to protect, and an uncle whose grief had hardened into bitterness. Each held pieces of the same history, and each, in their own way, was haunted by the absence that set them apart. Melanie, in Ryo's eyes, became a painful reminder of everything he had lost, and his resentment festered. His anger was misplaced, but to him, the feeling of betrayal was all-encompassing. The relationship reached a breaking point when Melanie, in an outburst of emotion and frustration, unleashed a burst of her water-based quirk during an argument. The strike was not intended to maim, but the sudden clash left a visible mark on Ryo's face and tore their bond apart. The incident created an emotional and physical boundary between them. After that day, Ryo withdrew further into himself and stopped engaging with Melanie at all. They continued to live in the same house, but as if occupying separate worlds. Neither spoke or acknowledged the other, and the home they shared became cold and silent, filled with unspoken tension and the weight of what had been lost. Ryo's bitterness grew over time. He blamed Melanie for the death of his sister and failed to see the pain in Melanie's eyes or the inner struggle she endured. Her survival felt to him like proof that events had gone wrong, and he never sought to understand her side or how she was coping with losing her mother. Melanie did not seek his forgiveness. She had already endured the loss of Aika and now faced the emotional distance from the man who should have helped her heal. She felt betrayed by his refusal to recognize her pain, and without common ground they eventually became strangers living under the same roof. In the years that followed, they barely coexisted. Ryo was not overtly cruel, but he made no effort to make Melanie feel welcome. His few interactions were cold and dismissive. Melanie retreated into her own space and found it easier to live with silence than to risk further hurt. She accepted Ryo as a lost cause in terms of reconciliation, though she still quietly yearned for connection and did not know how to bridge the gulf between them. Beneath Ryo's exterior, there was a heavy burden of guilt and grief. His anger toward Melanie was entangled with his inability to process Aika's death. He was not wholly consumed by villainy. There were fleeting moments of vulnerability, but pride and a hardened ego kept him from reaching out. He kept his distance to shield himself from more pain. He did care for Melanie in his own conflicted way, but he could not separate his love for Aika from the resentment he directed at Melanie, who reminded him of both loss and responsibility. He remained, in his own manner, broken and unsure how to mourn. Despite the silence that defined their daily lives, a lingering possibility of reconciliation remained. Melanie's gradual journey toward healing might one day prompt her to confront their shared pain. She understood that, despite everything, finding peace and forgiveness would be what Aika would have wanted for them. Shiro Akua, Ryo's son and Melanie's cousin, lived in Mizudafu, Japan. Their relationship had been estranged and was only slowly rebuilding. Although he was family, Shiro and Melanie never shared a smooth bond. Shiro had always tried to reach out and offer support, but Melanie's grief and resentment kept her distant. His presence became another reminder of the fractured family left in the wake of Aika's death. When Shiro was younger, he made earnest attempts to be part of Melanie's life, seeking her attention and trying to show he cared. Each effort was met with anger and rejection that hurt him deeply. He did not understand the wall between them, and every pushback chipped away at his confidence. Over time he withdrew emotionally, and the two went years with little to no contact, carrying unresolved tension. Those years felt like an eternity to Shiro. He suffered a quiet sense of loss and carried guilt that he might have done more, but his attempts never managed to bridge the gap. Slowly, both he and Melanie began to change. After confronting her grief and trauma, Melanie started to soften and came to realize that Shiro was not her enemy. That realization opened a small door toward reconciliation. Her anger toward Shiro had been misdirected, born of pain. As she matured and began to heal, Melanie started to see him for who he really was, a cousin who shared her blood and family history, someone who only ever wanted to help. Shiro, in turn, had grown more confident and steady. He understood that the past could not be erased, and while he still hoped for a closer relationship with Melanie, he learned to approach her differently. He stopped forcing his presence into her life and waited for Melanie to come to him on her own terms. His patience allowed Melanie to open up little by little, and she gradually came to appreciate his gentleness and sensitivity, qualities she had never acknowledged before. The turning point came during an emotionally fraught moment when Melanie was battling her inner demons. Shiro reached out with a simple act of support, an unspoken kindness that caught her off guard. In that moment, Melanie realized Shiro was not like Ryo. He would not hurt her and was not someone to be feared. He was a young man trying to find his way, someone who had quietly tried to be there for her even when she had not recognized it. That small gesture did not instantly fix everything, but it began a new chapter. Over time, they started to speak again, slowly rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. They were not instantly best friends, but the foundation was finally there for a connection that had long been missing. As they both matured, Shiro and Melanie found common ground in their shared experiences and struggles with family history. Their bond strengthened, and Melanie came to see Shiro as more than a cousin, someone she could trust, someone who had always wanted to help but had been unsure how. Shiro grew protective of Melanie. Though their past was far from perfect, he was determined to be a positive force in her life, even if it meant taking things slowly. Their relationship evolved into one of the deepest and most supportive friendships Melanie would have. Eventually they became inseparable, with Shiro often serving as her anchor when she needed someone, even if she did not always admit it. In time they became the first to turn to each other in need, standing side by side through thick and thin. Shiro would always support Melanie, and she, in turn, would have his back in ways she had never before considered. Backstory: Melanie Acua had once been a cheerful, bright child, raised in the warmth of her mother Aika's love. Aika, who had a fire-centered quirk, was devoted and constantly tried to shield Melanie from the harshness of the world. Melanie's father, Shin Acua, was an infamous figure with a dark past. Shin's relationship with Aika was elusive. He came and went like a shadow, seldom seen by Melanie, but the love between Aika and Shin seemed to transcend the distance, and Melanie grew up secure in the belief that her parents, despite their differences, had something meaningful together. That peace would not last. When Melanie was 6, the world she knew was shattered. Enemies from Shin's past found their way to the family's doorstep. Aika desperately tried to get Melanie to safety, but the attackers were swift. In the chaos that followed, Aika was killed in front of Melanie, a traumatic event that would haunt her forever. In her shock and desperation, Melanie's dormant quirk, a powerful water ability, surged uncontrollably. A towering wave rose and swept the attackers away in a dramatic, overwhelming display of power. The scene felt unreal, like something out of an animated tale, water swirling, knocking the assailants off balance and carrying them from the yard. Melanie, in her fragile state, had unleashed a force she could not control, and the consequences were heavy. The aftermath left Melanie numb and broken, a guilt she would carry for years. Shin returned to find the house in ruins and his wife gone. He found Melanie unconscious and barely clinging to life. Grief-stricken and with no clear option, Shin took Melanie to a family member he could still trust, Aika's twin brother, Ryo. Life with Uncle Ryo. After leaving Melanie in Ryo's care, Shin disappeared. Ryo was not kind. He blamed Melanie for his sister's death and let his bitterness dictate his behavior. His cold indifference and harshness became Melanie's daily reality. She endured a home where love and warmth were absent, and Ryo's cruelty often manifested as verbal harshness that made her feel unwanted and unworthy. Melanie kept to herself, refusing to cry out for attention or sympathy. Her only solace was the memory of her mother, the warmth and love that had existed before the violence. Ryo's words and actions became a constant reminder that she was alone, and that the only thing she had left was that memory. The struggle within. As years passed, Melanie's relationship with her father remained strained. Shin's absence was a constant ache. He reached out occasionally but never stayed. His life and choices kept him at a distance. Though he cared in his own complicated way, the bond between father and daughter was thin and fragile. Melanie's guilt over what had happened, combined with years of cold treatment, shaped much of her youth. She battled her inner turmoil while learning to control her quirk and carry on. Over time, with the steady presence of people like Shiro and the persistence of her own resolve, she began the slow work of healing and reclaiming the life that had been taken from her childhood. Still, her father never stopped protecting his daughter from afar. In dangerous moments, he appeared in secret to ensure her safety, even though he could not be the father she truly needed. Melanie's anger and resentment grew over time. She had lost her mother and felt abandoned by the parent who should have cared for her. The confusion and chaos of her early life led Melanie to question everything: her father's morality, her own quirk, and the family she had once known. She struggled with her sense of self, unsure where she fit in the world. Even in the face of darkness, there was light within Melanie, a desire to be better and to honor the memory of her mother. Aika's love remained the foundation of Melanie's heart, even when she did not always know how to express it. In her mind, Aika's legacy was compassion, protecting the innocent, and fighting for what was right. Her mother's spirit lived on in Melanie, and though she did not always show it, Melanie carried that strength inside her. The turning point came slowly but inevitably. Melanie believed Aika would have wanted her to live a life of compassion and to fight for what was right. She began reaching out to others, learning that her grief and pain did not have to define her. She enrolled at UA High School, hoping that training there would give her the strength she needed not only for herself but to honor the legacy of her mother. Melanie Acua's abilities and traits were notable. Power rated 4 out of 5. Melanie's quirk granted her a strong command of water manipulation. Her abilities could overwhelm opponents by shaping and directing large volumes of water, and her water constructs became stronger with focus and precision. While still learning to control her quirk fully, her potential for raw strength was immense, capable of producing powerful, decisive effects when necessary. Speed was 4 out of 5. Melanie was quick and able to evade attacks and move swiftly in combat. Her water manipulation gave her an advantage in movement, allowing her to use currents to propel herself and enhance agility. This speed came from both her natural agility and her ability to flow fluidly with her quirk. She could often use water to change position rapidly and surprise opponents, though it required energy and focus. Technique was 4 out of 5. Melanie demonstrated a high degree of technical skill with her quirk. She could manipulate water with precision, creating barriers and weapons, and controlling the flow of water strategically. Training at UA High refined her technique, especially for defensive barriers and containment strategies. She still struggled with longer or more intricate manipulations and had room to grow in controlling water on a larger scale. Intelligence was 4 out of 5. Melanie was strategic and observant. She often analyzed situations quietly, thinking through the best approach to a problem. Her sharp mind allowed her to outthink opponents and find creative uses for her quirk in battle. She excelled at reading people's movements and weaknesses, though intense emotions could sometimes cloud her judgment. Cooperativeness was 1 out of 5. Melanie had difficulty working in teams. She was reserved and introverted, relying on her own judgment rather than depending on others. Trust issues from her past made it hard to open up to peers or cooperate in group settings. Her lack of cooperativeness stemmed from trauma and years of isolation, but when stakes were high and she identified someone trustworthy, she could work with others to a limited extent. Her emotional walls made team activities challenging, though she slowly learned to rely on others through her growth at UA High. Additional traits included exceptional resilience, rated 5 out of having experienced loss early in life. Melanie learned to persevere and carry on despite hardships. Her resilience allowed her to recover quickly after setbacks, both mentally and physically. She refused to give up. Control was 3 out of 5. While her quirk had great potential, maintaining precision, timing, and scale could be difficult under pressure. Her emotional state influenced her control, making calmness essential in high-stress situations. Stamina was 3 out of 5. Melanie's endurance was solid but limited. Intense use of her quirk could drain her energy, so she needed to manage her power during extended battles or training sessions. Quirk name, Tide Weaver. Type, Emitter. Description: Melanie manipulates and controls water through precise, fluid movements. Her quirk allows her to shape water from external sources nearby pools, rain, humidity, or carried containers and, with great effort, generates small amounts from her own body through sweat or condensation, though doing so is extremely taxing. Her time at UA High focused on refining these skills, building trust with classmates, and learning to channel her strength in ways that honored her mother's legacy. Her control was elegant, favoring smooth arcs, whips, walls, and ribbons of water used for offense, defense, and utility. Abilities and techniques. Riptide Strike, a fast, high-pressure whip or jet of water that struck with stunning force, able to knock back opponents or slice through weaker materials. Stillwater Shield, a suspended, circular wall of water that absorbed impact or softened attacks before they reached her. Undertow Bind, water sent around an opponent's feet or arms to drag them off balance or temporarily trap them. Vapor Veil, advanced heat used to create a thick fog from water, allowing her to obscure vision and move stealthily. Moon Pull, ultimate technique, mimic tidal forces, allowing Melanie to pull water in massive sweeps across a battlefield difficult to control and requiring concentration, with subtle lunar influences on its strength. Pose. Melanie needed water nearby or had to conserve her energy to create it herself. Overuse led to dehydration and physical fatigue. Her emotions directly affected her control. When she was distressed, her water became turbulent and harder to command. Quirk Awakening Ice Control. At a critical emotional moment tied to protecting someone dear, Melanie's quirk evolved. Her water could now be frozen instantly, allowing her to shift from fluid grace to sharply focused power. This new layer of control was taxing and emotionally charged, but it changed her capabilities. Awakened techniques, water plus ice. Glacier Bloom slammed water into the ground and rapidly froze it, creating crystalline ice formations to trap opponents or alter terrain. Frost Whip, a frozen lash with ice crystal tips, heavier than water alone, it struck with greater force and adhered briefly on contact. Ice Lotus Shield, an upgraded defensive bloom of petal-like ice that deflected or blocked incoming attacks. Frozen Pulse, a rapid burst of ice around her that froze moisture in the air or on surfaces. Tide Glass Step, platforms of ice created beneath her feet mid-battle to grant aerial mobility. Mirror Lake Mirage, an advanced version of Vapor Veil that turned water to smooth reflective ice to disorient opponents or create visual illusions. Drawbacks of ice. Ice techniques rapidly drained body heat, extended use risked hypothermia. Emotional triggers affected ice control more than water trauma could cause instability. She had to balance between fluid and frozen forms, or she risked losing control of her constructs. Symbolism. Water represented control, grace, and restraint. Ice represented protection, trauma, and evolution. Melanie's stoic, unreadable nature mirrored water's surface calm but hiding depths. Her awakening into ice showed that she was finally letting internal emotions solidify into action, cutting through threats instead of flowing around them. Ice was what happened when still water was forced to endure too long it hardened. Melanie had a crush on Izuku Midoriya. Melanie did not believe in second chances. Not for people like her. Not after everything she had lost and everything she had done. Izuku Midoriya was kind where she was cold, hopeful where she was quiet, and stubborn in a way that made her conflicted because he kept caring even when she pushed him away. She used to scoff at his optimism and his constant need to help people, but he never stopped. He saw through her walls, read her silences as others read words, and he never demanded she open up. He simply stayed, steady, gentle, and constant. It happened in the middle of chaos. They were ambushed. A villain's blades had already torn at part of her hero's suit, leaving fabric damaged. Her long, dark hair like her mother's had come loose, wet and heavy from her own quirk. It clung to her face and arms, slowing her in the thick of combat, a remnant of the past weighing her down in more ways than one. Sparks, smoke, ice, and steam filled the air as the fight unfolded in an anime-paced blur of motion. She stood with trembling hands and burning lungs. Her reflection shimmered in a puddle near her feet, and she did not recognize the person staring back. She saw weakness, grief, and fear, someone still clinging to a ghost. Izuku told her that she did not have to keep carrying the past to honor it and that she was allowed to be herself, not what anyone else had left behind. His voice cut through the noise and reached her. At that, something snapped. Melanie summoned a blade of ice with precise, controlled motion and, without exchanging words, cut her hair during the battle. Long strands fell away like dead weight. When the fight resumed, she moved faster, lighter, and freer. After the fight, in the quiet of the recovery room, she stood before a mirror with her short hair clinging to her cheeks and her breath unsteady. She expected to hate the image, but she did not. She liked it. She looked strong, real, and herself. She never voiced it, but she credited that moment to Izuku Midoriya, the boy who reminded her that she did not have to be defined by loss and that perhaps she could live. Fun details about Melanie Acua. She was terrible with spicy food. Even mild heat made her gulp down water as if her life depended on it. She once pretended tears from curry were caused by onions. She collected glass bottles, fascinated by how water refracted inside them. Her dorm shelf was a quiet rainbow of reflections. She often muttered to her quirk, whether intentionally or not, as a way to soothe herself when overwhelmed. Years of tension at her uncle's home had taught her to fall asleep anywhere, curled in corners or sitting against a wall. Her body ran cold from frequent use of her water and ice abilities. She layered oversized sweaters and was often found under blankets. Koi fish were her secret comfort. She kept a small koi patch on the inside of her hero outfit's collar. She was not great with tech. She once nearly ruined a school tablet because of water residue on her fingertips. She was a talented ink sketch artist, drawing haunting ocean scenes and fragmented portraits of her mother. Her sketchbook remained unseen by classmates. Thunder terrified her, storms made her tense, and only recently did she begin to steady herself with focused breathing, a technique Izuku had encouraged. She loved tea for its warmth and calm, a nightly reminder of her mother's routine. She wore her mother's bracelet, a simple cord with a blue bead, tucked beneath her sleeve and kept on at all times. Melanie's voice in narrative. Melanie insisted that she was quiet, not cold, and that most people simply did not stay long enough to learn the difference. She maintained that she did not need the world to understand her, only the people she chose to let in. She often noted that people mistook silence for surrender, but it was not surrender. She admitted that sometimes it was just the calm before the flood. She remembered her mother as her sun. Losing her had felt like losing the light in everything. She told herself the ocean never forgets, and she did not forget either. Her mother had called her a water lily, saying she bloomed even in stillness, and she still tried to believe that. She reflected that the water listened better when she stopped trying to control it. It did not need orders, it needed trust. The ice had come when she needed armor. When grief was not enough, the cold rose to protect her. In battle she noted that opponents moved loud while she moved like the tide, quiet, until it pulled them under. She believed that anyone who chose to fight in her element risked being overwhelmed. She did not need to shout to strike like a storm. She observed that Izuku spoke as if the world were worth saving, and for some reason she believed him. He had looked at her as if she were not broken, as if she were becoming. She cut her hair that day, but he had been the one who helped her grow. She used to wish to forget, but now she wanted to live in a way her mother would be proud of. She admitted she might not yet know who she was, but she knew who she was not, and that was a start. Serafina Varea is 22, 5 feet 3, born on March 10, and governed by a Piscean temperament, emotionally intuitive, artistic, and often inwardly dreamy. Once a rebellious figure who dabbled in villainy for personal reasons, she later chose to teach. Her journey traces a fall and a careful redemption. As a teacher, she favors unconventional lessons that emphasize critical thinking and personal freedom, informed by the mistakes of her past. Her family uses several affectionate names for her. Her younger sisters call her Sarah in a playful way that blends familiarity and the sense of her being the older sister. Their mother calls her Songbird because of the soothing, stirring quality of her voice. A former antagonist named Dabi mockingly calls her Mermaid to highlight how her beauty and charm can draw people in before revealing a darker side. Serafina is enigmatic and reserved. Her quiet demeanor is often mistaken for shyness or indifference, but she prefers to observe rather than engage. She speaks very little, and when she does, it is usually a soft, carefully chosen phrase reserved for people she respects. She often communicates through sign language to preserve her voice for the precise control her quirk requires. Over time, this habit becomes so ingrained that even her quieter moments are expressed as much with her hands as with words. Despite her reticence, Serafina has a sharp mind and a deep curiosity about the world. She is frequently lost in thought, reflecting on ideas or watching others from a distance. An air of mystery surrounds her, drawing people in even as she keeps them at arm's length. She does not actively seek relationships. Those who manage to get close find that her walls are not easily breached. A darker side emerges when Serafina is pushed too far. Though usually calm and composed, she harbors a secret tendency towards sadistic fascination when in positions of power. It is not cruelty for its own sake but a disturbing attraction to control. Watching others struggle gives her a sense of satisfaction she avoids confronting. This streak, combined with a willingness to take reckless risks in battle, has led her to make rash decisions that endanger herself and others. Her quirk, which manipulates sound, can inflict great harm when used without restraint. Beneath that shadowed edge, Serafina is quietly protective of her siblings. Her love for them is practical and steadfast. She will take great risks to keep them safe. This loyalty is the anchor that reminds her there is still goodness within, even when she feels conflicted. In her later life as a teacher, Serafina gradually opens up. Her experiences in villainy and the consequences that followed push her to seek therapy and counseling. Those sessions help her confront the complexity of her emotions. She struggles, but grows more empathetic and understanding. She still wrestles with inner turmoil and sometimes fears she may never fully escape it, but she strives to be a stable, supportive figure for her students. In the classroom she speaks more often, though she remains measured and sparing with small talk. Her interactions are direct and concise. She does not sugarcoat expectations and pushes her students to think critically, reflecting her own moral struggles and growth. Her teaching is intense and demanding, designed to challenge students to develop independence and personal responsibility. Her quirk, called Siren, is sound-based and harnesses the power of her voice to affect those who hear it. By shaping pitch, tone, and rhythm, she can manipulate sound waves to produce a range of effects from gentle to profound. Because the quirk is activated through vocalization, it is both powerful and risky. Overuse can be dangerous to Elise and herself. Siren's gentlest effect is the ability to induce sleep. By singing slow, soothing melodies, Serafina can lull others into deep rest. The effect can range from mild drowsiness to several hours of sleep, depending on duration and volume, and it is useful for subduing opponents or protecting allies, though it can leave those affected vulnerable. With a slightly faster, rhythmic tone, she can induce calm. This effect quells panic, anxiety, or rage, making her effective at conflict resolution, crowd control, and calming anxious companions. It can pacify opponents, reducing their inclination to fight, but the calming effect is temporary and prolonged exposure can lead to drowsiness and lack of focus. The most dangerous aspect of Siren is its potential to influence minds. When she sings in a low, haunting tone, her voice can exert a strong mental influence, subtly guiding thoughts, emotions, or actions for a brief time. This requires a precise combination of melody, rhythm, and volume. When successful, those affected act in ways they might not otherwise, often left confused afterward and partially aware of the manipulation. Serafina's ability brings both strategic advantage and moral complication. It has allowed her to protect and to harm, to control and to heal. Her life is a balancing act between the person she fears she might become and the teacher she works to become, guided by the quiet love she bears for her family and the hard lessons of her past. Serafina's siren quirk can overwhelm both the target and herself, requiring intense concentration and energy to maintain and leaving her physically drained afterward. The range of siren is directly tied to how far Serafina's voice can reach. Volume, pitch, and clarity affect its distance. Without amplification, her voice typically carries up to 50 meters in an open space, though noisy environments shorten this range. Microphones or amplifiers can extend her reach to hundreds of meters or across large buildings. If a listener is wearing effective sound blocking equipment, the quirk is rendered ineffective because the singing cannot be heard. After using her quirk, Serafina is vulnerable to vocal strain. The more intense or prolonged the use, the greater the damage to her vocal cords. Singing at high volumes or in certain pitches leaves her throat sore and can trigger violent coughing fits that leave her weakened and unable to speak for hours or even days. These episodes signal serious harm to her voice and force her to rest before risking further damage. For this reason, she is careful about when and how she uses siren, especially when silence or subtlety is important. The effects of siren are not selective. When Serafina activates her quirk, allies and enemies within range are affected alike. In chaotic combat situations, this can create unintended consequences. Enemies may be pacified or rendered compliant, but allies can fall into the same hypnotic or calming state. Serafina must be cautious about when to use her ability, often ensuring she is alone or in a controlled environment before unleashing it. Control and precision require intense focus. If Serafina cannot regulate tone, pitch, or melody, the effects can be unpredictable. In moments of high stress or emotional turmoil, the quirk may backfire, affecting unintended targets or failing to achieve the desired result. The mind control aspect is particularly difficult to maintain, demanding immense mental concentration and often producing only short-lived effects. With time and training, Serafina's understanding and control over siren improve. She learns to manage the strain on her vocal cords, using the quirk more strategically and minimizing damage. Over the long term, she may develop techniques to limit effects to specific individuals or to amplify her range further. She could also learn to manipulate sound through subtle vibrations or lower volume methods that still carry the desired influence. Outfit concept: the Siren of the Blue Seas. The overall theme is regal, timeless, and enigmatic, with a touch of medieval elegance. Her dress is a deep royal blue, a mix of velvet and silk that complements her eyes and gives her an ethereal presence. The bodice features a traditional laced corset adorned with intricate silver filigree shaped like gentle waves. Dark laces contrast with the blue fabric, and the tailored silhouette accentuates her waist for an elegant, controlled look. The neckline can be a deep V with a soft, flowing collar or a high Victorian-inspired style embroidered with tiny silver musical notes that hint at her quirk. The sleeves are fitted to the elbow and then flow into sheer fabric with delicate lace embroidery, creating a graceful, almost ghostly effect. Soft metallic trim lines the hems, and subtle designs mimic sound waves. The flowing portions trail slightly behind her, adding a regal touch. The skirt is full and layered satin, reaching the floor in a bell shape that swirls dramatically as she moves. Outer layers are made of lighter, ethereal fabric that evokes ocean waves or mist, while a faint silver lining catches the light like rippling water. A slightly worn hem adds an element of mystery. Her footwear is practical and understated medieval-style flats or soft-laced boots hidden beneath the gown, suitable for movement and hinting at a past life that required both elegance and readiness. Accessories are tasteful and purposeful. A simple silver choker with a blue gemstone pendant reflecting her siren song, a decorative silver belt worn over the corset with small charms shaped like sound waves, and subtle silver bracers engraved with musical motifs that add a warrior-like refinement and could hide small tools. Her long black hair is styled in soft, loose waves that fall down her back in a dramatic, almost ethereal way, completing the image of a regal, mysterious figure tied to both music and the sea. Akane's formal look balanced elegance and practicality, a disguise meant to blend into high society while hinting at something deeper. Her hair could be partially tied in a half-up, half-down style with small silver pins or left flowing to complement the medieval, romantic lines of her gown. For a more regal touch, a silver crown or delicate tiara set with tiny sapphires might rest at the crown of her head. Her makeup remained minimal but striking, pale skin with dark winged eyeliner to draw attention to her piercing blue eyes, lips in a soft mauve or rose, a subtle highlight on the cheekbones, and a hint of lavender eyeshadow that suggested an otherworldly presence without excess. For undercover formal events, she favored a classic black dress with deep blue or silver accents. The black was sleek and understated so she could move unnoticed, while the subtle details hinted at her true identity. The gown was form-fitting without being tight, streamlined to convey a sophisticated silhouette with nods to classical structure. The tailored bodice created a smooth, elegant line, and the modest V-neck remained tasteful and refined. Small, elegant silver motifs suggestive of musical notes or stylized sound waves were woven along the seams and near the neckline as a quiet reference to her quirk. To add a layer of practicality and authority, she often wore a fitted, tailored jacket or long coat over the dress. The coat, in black or deep navy with a slight gloss, gave her an air of mystery and provided coverage. A high collar lent a subtly regal, intimidating look, and a fur trim at the collar could add opulence when needed. The sleeves extended slightly past the wrist into fitted cuffs, which bore faint silver accents or engravings that nodded to her abilities. Her footwear was elegant yet functional, sleek black heels with a small silver buckle for quiet movement, or pointed-toe ankle boots in polished black leather for a slightly edgier but still formal option. Accessories were understated and meaningful: a simple silver choker or delicate necklace with a small sapphire, a thin bracelet with a tiny charm echoing a sound wave, and a minimalist leather belt with a discreet musical engraving, each item refined and unobtrusive while carrying personal symbolism. For the undercover hairstyle, she preferred a sleek updo or a neat low ponytail, kept polished without drawing unnecessary attention. Makeup for the disguise used soft neutral tones, bold eyeliner and long lashes to make her eyes noticeable yet restrained, lips in muted rose or berry, and a gentle dewy highlight to suggest luminosity. A soft shimmer along the cheekbones reinforced a subtle, ethereal quality connected to her siren persona. Practicality remained part of the design. The jacket and dress featured hidden compartments in seams that concealed small defensive tools and compact gadgets, easily accessible if needed but not obvious. If she needed to be even more inconspicuous, a simple veil or scarf tucked into her jacket could obscure her face enough to make recognition harder. At home, Akane's sleepwear favored comfort with quiet elegance. She wore a soft, slightly oversized silk sleep shirt with a loose collar or V-neck for a relaxed but graceful silhouette, the sleeves rolled up to just below the elbow. The fabric in deep midnight blue or dark teal carried a soft sheen that reflected the shades of her quirk. Small, subtle embroidery along the collar or cuffs, tiny treble clefs or swirling sound waves offered a private nod to her identity. Her pajama bottoms were loose and flowing for comfort, wide-legged silk pants or cozy shorts depending on the season, with an elastic waistband and a matching fabric that created a unified, restful look. The colors matched the top, fading gently toward the hem for a calm, refined finish. If she's wearing shorts, they have a simple, understated trim of lace or delicate detailing at the hem. The pajama pants include a couple of hidden pockets just large enough for small trinkets, a tiny key, or a simple piece of jewelry she keeps for comfort, reflecting her tendency to keep personal things close. Her slippers are cozy and minimalistic, soft and plush like faux fur or velvet, designed for comfort around the house. A small metallic detail, such as a subtle soundwave symbol or silver embroidery of a note, is tucked into the heel, personal without being obvious. The colors lean toward darker shades to match the outfit, a mix of black and deep blue with a lighter blue or silver lining for contrast. A cozy, oversized blanket is draped over the back of a chair or on her bed, matching the pajama color scheme dark blue with silver thread woven through in an intricate, abstract pattern that hints at a siren-like nature, or perhaps an embroidered motif of a subtle melody only she recognizes. A simple hair tie or soft headband keeps her hair back when she rests or meditates. The tie is velvet or satin and coordinates with the pajamas, maybe bearing a small charm or symbol associated with her quirk, like a moon to symbolize a connection to quieter, darker instincts. The overall aesthetic of her loungewear is comfortable and understated, with a quiet elegance. It suits someone who values personal comfort and subtle luxury, a design that reflects a duality, outward calm and private complexity. Even at rest, she maintains an air of quiet control and mystery. Ryuga Suzuki, her father, is deceased. He had been an involved and loving parent who struggled privately with anxiety that sometimes made him seem erratic or overprotective. Despite his nervousness, he was always present for his children and tried to guide Serafina through life's challenges. His efforts were driven by his desire to do his best as a father, even when doubt crept in. He was not perfect, but he showed his love in the ways he could. Serafina remembers him with a mixture of warmth and sorrow. His passing left a deep void, because he was one of the few who truly saw her and tried to protect her. Kana Furedo, the mother, is alive. She is a woman of few words who hides her emotions behind a cold, distant exterior. Her upbringing taught her to build emotional walls, and she learned to keep feelings in check. As a parent, she offered structure and stability rather than overt warmth, loving her children in a way that is difficult to express. Serafina has always felt a distance from Kana. She understands that her mother cares, but the lack of outward affection created a sense of abandonment. Their relationship is complex, marked by resentment and a quiet yearning for approval. Alec Furedo, the older brother, is alive but his whereabouts are unknown. Like his mother, he is distant and keeps his emotions guarded. He carries a hardened exterior and prefers solitude. Although he felt responsible for his younger siblings, that responsibility rarely translated into affection. His departure from home was not unexpected. He sought independence and a life apart from the family's complicated dynamics. Serafina's relationship with Alec has always been strained. She admired him from afar and longed for connection, but his coldness left her feeling isolated. His disappearance deepened that sense of abandonment, though part of her still hopes he will return to bridge the gap between them. Kōhei Furedo, the younger brother, is also alive and his whereabouts are unknown. He is similarly withdrawn and loner-like, preferring to avoid emotional bonds. He has never shown much interest in family dynamics and remains difficult to read. The only person who seems to reach him is Alana, with whom he shares a rare moment of connection. Serafina has never been able to connect with Kurai and accepts that he is someone who keeps himself locked away, leaving her with a quiet ache for the brother she never truly knew. Alana Furedo, the youngest sister, is alive and currently at UA. She is open, cheerful, and embodies hope and potential. Her quirk contrasts with Akane's more nurturing or healing, which has made her well-liked and promising at UA. Alana developed a sense of responsibility early and shines as someone others gravitate toward, her natural charisma and leadership standing out among her peers. Despite the age gap, Alana is protective of Akane. Their relationship is complicated by Akane's darker tendencies and Alana's idealism, but the bond between them endures. Akane respected Alana's strength but felt conflicted by her sister's brightness, because it only reminded her of what she had lost in her own heart. Anthea Furedo was the serious, disciplined younger sister who took life's challenges head-on without complaint. She kept a softer side hidden and focused on being the most reliable and responsible sibling. Anthea's stoic nature made her a natural leader in crises, and she often carried the burden of the family's well-being. Though she presented herself as unshakable, she was deeply empathetic beneath the surface. Serafina admired Anthea's composure and looked to her as someone who always seemed to have everything figured out. Their quiet understanding comforted Serafina, even when she wished Anthea would show more warmth. Kane Furedo was energetic, always on the move, and quick-witted beyond his years. His bubbly persona made him a favorite among his siblings, but he often masked deeper thoughts behind an adorable, carefree demeanor. His unpredictability sometimes left Serafina uncertain, torn between protectiveness and envy for his lightheartedness. She hoped they would grow closer as they matured. Toma Fureto, the youngest, carried an innocent and sweet demeanor that belied a sharper, more complex mind. Often overlooked because of his adorable composure, Toma kept his true feelings close and presented himself as the lovable youngest sibling. Serafina felt both protective and wary of him, sensing a hidden side she could not fully trust. She cared for him deeply while accepting that he, like the rest of the family, had secrets to protect. From an early age, Serafina, known as Akane at the time, had difficulty understanding and expressing empathy. Her emotions were muted, and she struggled with remorse or guilt in ways that set her apart from other children. Intelligent and perceptive, she was aware of her surroundings but unable to truly connect with others, which made her feel like an outsider in her own family despite their love. When she was 8, the family was shattered when her parents, Ryuga and Kana, were killed in an unexpected attack. The chaos surrounding their deaths left Serafina confused and isolated as the system failed her and her siblings. The warm, familiar home was gone, and the remaining children were sent to live with their paternal step-grandmother, Akihito Suzuki. Akihito was a cold, harsh woman who believed in a brutal form of destiny. The Suzuki household became a place of emotional neglect, cruelty, and manipulation. The children were treated like burdens, and Serafina became accustomed to living in fear under constant scrutiny and punishment. Her emotional numbness protected her from feeling the worst of it, so she withdrew further and refused to allow herself to fully experience the abuse. By 12, Serafina's frustration and resentment had reached a breaking point. She came to hate everything about her life: her mother's distant love, her father's failed heroism, and the abusive environment trapping her. Quietly rebellious, she began to plot ways to escape, but the walls around her felt too high and the sense of abandonment crushing. At 14, in an act of desperate defiance, she staged her own death to escape the life she had been forced into, leaving behind a bitter note that blamed the world and her circumstances. Her escape was driven by a desperate need to get out, with little regard for consequences. Serafina wandered the city for weeks, a lost child who had seen too much. In that chaos she was found by Kurojiiri, an agent of All for One. Kurojiiri recognized potential in the angry, directionless girl and brought her before All for One, the enigmatic leader of a growing network of villainous operations. Seeing her resentment toward a hero society that had failed her, all for one offered protection, mentorship, and a sense of belonging Serafina had not known since her parents' deaths. Under his guidance, her hatred for the hero system hardened. She could not accept that those who claimed to protect people had allowed her family to be destroyed. Her father's heroism, which she associated with their loss, filled her with a twisted mixture of disgust and lingering love. That conflict haunted her, warping her emotions into something complicated and painful. Still, the comfort and purpose all for one provided were undeniable, and she began to sharpen both her quirk and her resolve, convinced that power was the one thing she could truly rely on. It became clear to her that in a world full of betrayal and failure, only strength mattered. The trauma from Serafina's childhood never truly left her. Her emotions were an enigma, often conflicting, unpredictable, and difficult to process. As she matured, she became more methodical in her actions, using her quirk to control and manipulate situations to her advantage. The psychological scars from her past lingered. She struggled with a profound sense of loss and could not let go of her family's deaths. At the same time, she resented herself for still harboring complicated feelings for a father she viewed as a symbol of everything wrong with the world. Serafina eventually grew distant from her past and embraced the path of a villain, fueled by the rage and sadness that had consumed her from a young age. Yet, deep down there was always a flicker of something softer, a longing to find the family she had lost and to understand the feelings those people had left behind. Her hatred of hero society became more personal as her journey continued, and she began to question whether she truly wanted revenge or simply wanted to be understood. Behind the mask of coldness, a complex person struggled with inner conflict that no one else could see. Her love interest was Dabi, Tuya Todoroki. Serafina had always been a quiet storm, emotions locked away behind a cold exterior, and her time in the League of Villains deepened her sense of isolation even as she stood among others who shared anger and bitterness toward society. She had seen the League as a place to belong, a world where she did not have to fake normalcy or hide her pain. At first, the connection between Serafina and Dabi was strained and tense. Dabi's raw anger and cynical worldview collided with Serafina's introverted, emotionally distant nature. As they worked together, however, their shared pain and distrust of society slowly formed a bond. Dabi's anger mirrored Serafina's own, both born from years of neglect, loss, and betrayal, and their shared experiences created a deep, unspoken understanding. Despite harsh exteriors, a quiet affection began to develop. Serafina's feelings for Dabi were complicated, torn between admiration and concern for someone so damaged and distant. In the chaos of the League, their bond deepened into a fierce and complicated attachment that grew in the spaces between the clashes and destruction they instigated. Dabi's icy demeanor showed cracks when he was around Serafina. He never fully opened up, but she could see his vulnerability in the way he watched her and in his quiet, protective actions during dangerous moments. She never expected the relationship to become more than an unspoken understanding, until a late night together during a mission led to an unexpected confession from Dabi that revealed a glimpse of the person beneath his anger. Serafina realized in that moment how much she cared for him. Their connection remained emotionally charged but restrained, softened into a more tender, PG-13 intimacy of shared confessions and protective gestures rather than anything explicit. Their relationship was never easy. Serafina's conflicting emotions, her hatred for hero society, her disillusionment, and her growing feelings for Dabi created a constant strain. As doubts about her path grew, she ultimately chose to betray the League. The decision was driven by a mixture of fear, love, and self-preservation. She had not planned to fall in love with anyone in the League, much less with someone as volatile as Dabi, but the fear of losing him to his own self-destructive tendencies pushed her to act. Serafina left the League and hid her son Kōhei, severing ties with the people she had once called family. She disappeared from Dabi's and the League's radar, raising Kage away from the chaos. Kage, born of their relationship, became her greatest secret. She believed she could not risk Dabi finding out, not while she remained in hiding. Serafina refused to allow her son to be pulled into the dangers of their world, even as the darkness of her past continued to shadow her. Years passed. Serafina built a life for herself and Kage, careful to keep her history buried. The guilt and sorrow of her betrayal weighed heavily on her heart. The love she had for Dabi never fully disappeared, but she could not shake the feeling that she had abandoned him to face the wreckage of their shared world alone. When Dabi's life neared its end, Serafina finally came forward. The burden of secrecy had grown too heavy. She reached out to Dabi and revealed the truth about Kage, their son, who was now a young child living in the quiet safety she had created. Dabi reacted with disbelief and anger, a storm of complicated emotions that was difficult to unravel in their final moments together. He had no answers, only fiery feelings and a deep hurt he had long kept buried. He had not expected the betrayal to be so complete, and even as he stood on the brink of death, part of him wanted to believe Serafina had acted for the right reasons. Serafina stood by his side and apologized through a quiet, steady voice. There was no joy in the reunion, only regret and the painful realization of how much she had loved him despite the turmoil they had endured. The moment was brief but deeply emotional, a final connection before Dabi passed, leaving Serafina with the knowledge that their son would grow up without knowing the man who had helped shape his world. Now Serafina lives with the consequences of her choices. Raising Kage alone, she seeks peace with what she has done and fights the urge to be drawn back into Dabi's shadow. Her son remains her world, her hope for redemption, and the one thing she is determined to protect. Serafina Furedo favored deep navy blue because it reminded her of quiet nights when no one could find her. She felt a strange kinship with the night-blooming Sirius, a flower that thrives unseen, and her singing voice, despite her distant demeanor, carried a haunting, lullaby-like quality. She had also learned to sew and repair clothes by hand, a quiet talent that helped her keep their small life together. Thorn Uchigasaki was a 16-year-old civilian who moved through the world with a soft, steady strength. She tended to hum to herself after using her quirk, a quiet habit she did without noticing, as if the melody helped steady her when the strain eased. That humming became as much a part of her as the seeds she kept in a tiny pouch at her hip. She was the embodiment of gentle resilience. Warm and patient, Thorn met cold rooms and sharp words with an instinct to calm and help. She believed in the good in people, often to a fault, and would try to de-escalate conflict rather than escalate it. Because of that patience, many mistook her for weakness, but those who knew her understood the deep roots beneath her kindness. Thorn could be naive about tension and danger. She was often a step behind when it came to reading subtle cues, which led to awkward, earnest moments. Still, she approached life with an optimism that refused to be snuffed out. That patience had its limits. When someone she loved was hurt or insulted, Thorn changed in an instant. Her protectiveness burned bright and unwavering. She stood up for her friends with fierce determination. After an incident where she stepped into a scuffle to defend a friend, a mocking nickname followed, a whispered reminder among schoolmates that Thorn was not someone to be underestimated. The nickname lingered as a teasing legend, but Thorn herself never sought violence. She only acted when lines were crossed. Those who called her by pet names highlighted different facets of her life. Her mother once called her "my flower," a tender refrain that Thorn still felt echo in hard moments. Friends shortened her name to Ro in casual conversation, reflecting her approachable energy. Close companions joked and called her Sunny Thorn when her cheerfulness stood in contrast to panicked surroundings. An older mentor used Little Bloom as a gentle nudge toward the potential they saw in her. Each name carried warmth and memory. Thorn's appearance reflected a life spent outdoors. She stood 5 feet 2 inches tall with a petite, nimble frame. Her skin held a healthy tan, as if the gardens and forests she loved had left their mark. Her golden eyes were bright and curious, often wide with wonder or sparkling with laughter. When she focused or stood to protect someone, that same gaze hardened into an intense, determined shimmer. Her hair fell in loose black waves just past her shoulders, thick and wild. Twigs, leaves, and petals often clung to it despite her best efforts. Sometimes she tied it half up with vines or small flower pins, gifts that her quirk had provided. Her clothing leaned toward earth tones and comfortable practicality, flowy blouses, overalls with pockets full of seeds, and scuffed ankle boots with small wildflowers tucked into the laces. She favored embroidered flowers and hand-woven accessories and carried the faint scent of rosemary, soil, and wildflower honey. On a casual day in the garden, she wore a sage green blouse with soft ruffles, cream overalls rolled at the ankles and stained from tending plants, and worn brown boots. When training her quirk, she dressed for movement sleeveless tunics in chestnut tones, forest green leggings, and sturdy climbing boots. For sleep she favored a soft cream shirt and sage pants with delicate vine embroidery, wrapped in a shawl knitted by her mother. For formal occasions she chose a deep ivy green gown with embroidered blooms and a sheer cape that fell like mist. In such moments a small flower behind her ear opened when she smiled. Thorn's mother, Rose Achigasaki, had been a vivid presence in the young woman's life despite their short time together. Rose's bright red hair and warm laugh filled Thorn's earliest memories. She had been endlessly patient and nurturing, the source of comfort and small rituals that stayed with Thorn. The name My Flower had been whispered by Rose from the day Thorn was born, and Thorn kept that tenderness close, especially on nights when the world felt heavy. Thorn's quirks and small habits threaded through everything she did. She often braided flower stems into a bracelet and carried a tiny pouch of seeds. Vines sometimes wove themselves into the hems of her clothing, responding subtly to her mood. When she trained, arm wraps made of plant fiber could unravel into helpful tendrils at a moment's notice. Those gifts from her power felt like companions more than tools. Overall, Thorn moved through life as a steady presence, quiet, optimistic, and prepared to stand up for others. Her kindness was not passive. It was rooted in a strength that showed itself whenever someone she cared about needed protection. She carried Thorn on her hip while tending the garden, whispering the names of each plant like a prayer. They hummed lullabies together, Thorn's small voice mimicking Rose's, their bond quiet but radiant. Thorn has her mother's heart, but not her color, something she has mourned in secret since she was old enough to notice. Where Rose had fiery, unforgettable red hair, Thorn's wavy black locks tumble past her shoulders. Sometimes she stares into the mirror and wishes for just a hint of that brightness, a visible mark of the woman she misses more than words can say. Sometimes she threads a red ribbon through her hair or wears it tied half up, half down as a silent nod to her mother's memory. Though their time was brief, Rose's love never left Thorn. It lingers in her optimism, her kindness, and the quiet strength she hides behind a sunny disposition. Thorn still speaks to Rose sometimes in gardens, in dreams, and in the silence between breaths, hoping Rose hears her and smiles. Together, missing. To Thorn, her father was a ghost story, a name without a face. A cruel letter delivered to Rose long ago led Thorn to believe he had wanted nothing to do with her, and that belief shaped her view of love, trust, and self-worth. The truth had been buried. Sashi had never known Rose was Pierre-Nanti. The cold, final letter had been forged by his family to keep Rose out of his life. Trusting his parents, Sashi drifted on with no idea he had left someone behind. Years later, while going through family archives after his parents' death, Sashi found the letter. With it, everything cracked. Grief for the woman he once loved, rage for the lost years, and mourning for the child he had never known. He dropped everything and went looking. When he eventually found Thorn, she was stunned and guarded. This was not just a long-lost father reappearing. It was a stranger who had allowed her to believe she was unwanted. Sashi did not make excuses. He showed up quiet, respectful, and steady. He mourned Rose with Thorn, visited her garden, and asked questions about Thorn's life without demanding answers. At first she barely spoke to him. Little by little, through shared silences, awkward meals, and long walks where neither knew what to say, she began to see him not as the villain of her story but as another person broken by it. Their relationship is delicate but growing. There are moments when she sees the same quiet smile Rose used to wear, or when he fixes her garden gate without being asked, that tug at her heart. She is not ready to call him dad, but she thinks one day she might. Hinageshi Achigasaki, grandmother, alive. Owner of Crimson Bloom Flower Shop. Hinageshi is the thorny-stemmed bloom who raised Thorn. Sharp-tongued and sharp-eyed, she hides a fierce love beneath layers of weathered wisdom and the scent of tea. She greets most strangers with suspicion but offers her whole heart to those she calls family. She held baby Thorn the day after Rose's funeral and swore to protect her granddaughter with every last breath. While others offered pity, Hinageshi offered purpose. She did not coddle Thorn, but she never let her go unloved. Morning routines of tending the shop's garden beds turned into life lessons. Long evenings pruning flowers became quiet talks about grief, identity, and strength. Thorn works at the flower shop thanks to her nature-based ability and her grandmother's faith in her. While Thorn coaxes flowers to bloom with a whisper and a touch, Hinageshi manages the shop, scolds nosy customers, and proudly boasts about her granddaughter's talents. They name new hybrid blooms together, and Hinageshi secretly writes those names in her floral ledger like a shared diary. When Sashi appeared at the shop, Hinageshi struck him with her broom and scolded him for showing his face after what had happened to Rose. Even after learning the truth, she kept a close eye on him and let him into their lives slowly. She might never fully trust him, but she is grateful that Thorn gets a chance to know her father on her own terms. Despite her age, Hinageshi remains spry and commanding. Her ability, Verdant Pulse, sends rhythmic waves through soil and roots to encourage rapid growth, healing, or defense. She rarely uses it anymore except to scare off squirrels or nosy onlookers, but Thorn has inherited its potential in her own way. To Thorn, Hinageshi is home, steady, firm, fragrant with lavender and hibiscus, and always humming old songs while tying flower stems with ribbon. Shiro Uchigasaki, uncle, alive, runs a doctor's office in the local town. Shiro is the steady, quiet presence in Thorn's life. Unlike his fiery sister Rose, Shiro is soft-spoken but carries an aura of authority when needed. He is always there when someone needs him, whether fixing a scraped knee or offering a calm voice when the world feels overwhelming. As a doctor, Shiro is dedicated to his patients and skilled in both traditional medicine and alternative healing practices, often using herbs and remedies inspired by the family's connection to nature. His office is a peaceful, calming space filled with soft lighting and the scent of essential oils, reflecting his gentle nature. Thorn often spends time there after school, watching him treat patients and helping with small tasks while he keeps her away from delicate procedures. Thorn admires Shiro's ability to heal people not just physically but emotionally. She watches how he listens patiently to others, offering comfort with the same care he gives a prescription. Thorn has often said she wanted to be a doctor like him when she grew up, and Shiro never doubted her determination. When she offers to help with his work, he takes the time to teach her, explaining how important compassion and listening are alongside medical knowledge. Shiro's bond with Thorn is built on trust and respect. He sees in her the same drive he had as a child, eager to learn, to help, to heal. They spend weekends together, sometimes in the flower shop with Hinageshi, sometimes hiking nearby hills where Shiro shares his knowledge of medicinal plants. Though reserved compared to his sister, Shiro is always there for Thorn, guiding her when she feels uncertain and offering wisdom when needed. Shiro is often the person Thorn turns to when she feels conflicted about her family or the loss of her mother. He offers a balance of logic and emotional understanding. When Thorn expressed a desire to follow in his footsteps as a doctor, Shiro encouraged her, recognizing her potential to care for others, while also advising her to take her time and make sure it is truly the path she wants. Hiroto Uchigasaki, Thorn's cousin, helps run his father's doctor's office and is a third-year hero in training. He is protective, loyal, and fiercely dedicated, a quiet but ever-present figure in Thorn's life. Standing at 5 feet 10 inches with an athletic build, Hiroto moves with confidence and precision, traits that serve him both in the office and in training. His sharp gaze and reserved demeanor can make him seem serious, but he keeps a warmth for those closest to him. As a hero in training, Hiroto constantly balances studies and hero duties while still attending to family responsibilities. He assists his father at the clinic with the more physical tasks, helps patients, and learns medical procedures when needed. His training has prepared him to both heal and protect. His quirk enhances his speed, agility, and strength in short bursts, making him useful in emergencies and everyday tasks alike. Hiroto has always been there for Thorn, especially after the death of their mother, Rose. He stayed by her side through her struggles with loss, acting as both family and protector. His protectiveness sometimes comes across as overbearing, and he often shadows her closely in the hope of preventing harm, which can frustrate Thorn when she is trying to assert her independence. Despite that, Thorn values his presence and understands that his intentions come from deep care. He is the steady support she can rely on when Shiro is busy or when she is uncertain about her future. Hiro Achigasaki, their uncle, runs the family flower shop behind the scenes. He prefers to stay out of the spotlight and focuses on managing inventory and organizing deliveries. At 5 feet 9 inches, Hiro shares the same warm, positive energy that defines the Achigasaki family. With a disarming smile and approachable nature, he makes customers feel welcome and cared for. Hiro's quirk is earth manipulation, allowing him to influence soil, plants, and flowers. This ability complements his work at the shop and gives him a deep connection to nature similar to Thorn's quirk, though his focus is on cultivation, helping plants grow and bloom under ideal conditions. He is a quiet optimist, rarely upset, and serves as a calm, steady force that grounds the family. Hiro's intuition and thoughtfulness make him attuned to when someone needs help, even if they do not ask. He has a close, almost sibling-like relationship with Thorn. They work together in the shop, and he often teaches her about different flowers and plant care, passing on his knowledge and love of nature. Thorn looks up to Hiro and admires his consistently positive outlook. She often referred to him as the big brother she never had, and Hiro cherishes that role, offering steady support and encouragement as she grows. Their laughter and easy banter filled the flower shop with a warmth that greeted everyone who walked through the door. Hiro's calm nature made him perfect for tasks that required precision, like preparing plant deliveries and arranging the store's displays. He was a master at floral composition, and his understanding of plant growth let him cultivate some of the most unique and beautiful flowers in the shop. He had a special knack for helping plants flourish in unconventional environments and often experimented with new cultivation techniques. His gentle demeanor made him a trusted confidant for anyone who needed to talk about business matters or personal struggles. Though he rarely spoke about his past, it was clear his role in the shop was more than a job. It was a way to honor the legacy of his late sister, Rose. Riku Achigasaki was in that awkward stage of adolescence where he was still figuring out who he was, and it showed in a pronounced tsundere manner. Outwardly, he was brash, sarcastic, and stubborn, refusing to reveal vulnerability or affection. He acted indifferent, especially toward Thorn, arguing over the smallest things, insulting his friends, and taking pride in his independence. Deep down, however, Riku was caring and fiercely protective of the people he loved. He simply did not like to show it. His pride and inability to express his feelings often made him seem difficult for the sake of it. Riku and Thorn's relationship carried a lot of back-and-forth energy. He could act as if he did not care about her at all, particularly when she annoyed him, but he had a soft spot for her and would always rush to her side when she was in trouble, even if he pretended otherwise afterward. His tsundere behavior was not only an act of toughness but also a sign of inner conflict about his emotions. He struggled with feelings of love and care for those closest to him, and that tension sometimes surfaced as aggression or irritation. Hot-headed and quick to anger when his pride was challenged, Riku could be impulsive, often rushing into situations without thinking them through in an attempt to play the hero. Despite these flaws, Riku was loyal and deeply protective of family and friends. Underneath the bravado and sarcastic remarks was a big heart. Thorn had been the recipient of his silent, devoted care more times than she realized. His relationship with his brother Hiroto was complicated. They did not always see eye to eye. Hiroto's calm, gentle nature often frustrated Riku, who thought his cousin was too soft, yet Riku respected Hiroto's loyalty and ability to stay cool under pressure. Their differences created tension, especially when Riku acted impulsively and Hiroto stepped in to keep things from spiraling. Still, both shared a bond over Thorn and would do anything to protect her. Within their trio, Thorn acted as the unspoken leader. Neither Riku nor Hiroto would openly admit it, but Thorn drew people to her with optimism and kindness. Even Riku, despite his stubbornness, found himself swayed by her perspective and guidance and was more likely to follow her lead, albeit begrudgingly at times. The trio balanced well. Riku's fiery attitude tempered Hiroto's calm, and Thorn held them together with steady resolve. Thorn Uchigasaki had been raised by her mother, Rose Uchigasaki, in a small, modest home on the outskirts of a bustling city. Rose loved and devoted herself to Thorn, ensuring a childhood filled with warmth. Despite the absence of a father figure, Thorn's father, Sashi, had been a stranger to her, and her mother never spoke of him. Her world had felt simple and full of love. Her mother, her grandmother Hinageshi, and the flowers that grew around their home. The Uchigasaki family lived in harmony with nature, and Thorn's bond with plants formed in early childhood as Rose taught her to tend the flowers and care for the earth. She remained unaware of a dark secret her family had been hiding. One fateful night, when Thorn was just 4 years old, everything changed. A devastating fire broke out in their home while Rose was tucking Thorn into bed. The flames spread quickly and consumed everything in their path. What followed altered their lives forever. In a desperate attempt to save her daughter, Rose pushed Thorn through the window and into the yard below. Thorn landed safely, but she was left with burns across her arms, legs, and parts of her face, scars she would carry for the rest of her life. The fire that broke out in their home grew fast and bright. Rose did not make it out. Thorn, an orphan at 4 years old, carried the memory of that night like a permanent mark. She could still recall the heat and the sound of her mother's voice in her dreams. Over time, she came to see the scars as a symbol of survival and a reminder of her strength. Thorn's grandmother, Hinageshi Uchigasaki, was given custody after the fire. Though Thorn was too young to fully understand what had happened, she felt the deep absence of her mother. Hinageshi, heartbroken but practical, took Thorn in without hesitation and continued to run her flower shop, which had always been her life's work. Thorn began helping at the shop and developed a deep connection to nature as she learned to grow, arrange, and sell flowers. The scents of jasmine, rose, and lilac became her comfort, and the plants brought her a sense of peace. Her uncle, Shiro Uchigasaki, who helped run the shop, treated Thorn as his own daughter. He showed love through quiet support and steady protection, making sure she felt safe. Thorn trusted that Shiro would always look out for her, even in dark times. As she grew, Thorn also became aware of something else, an innate connection to plants. Her ability strengthened whenever she was near trees or flowers, and plants seemed to respond to her emotions. She could make flowers bloom with a touch or guide vines and branches with a thought. The power was overwhelming at times, and her lack of control made her anxious. The trauma of her mother's death had awakened something deep inside her, a primal, untamed awareness tied to the living world. Hinageshi, who had long suspected that Thorn's bond with nature was more than familial, encouraged her to develop it. She enlisted Shiro, who had learned to manage his own abilities, to help teach Thorn. Shiro worked with her on calming her emotions and channeling her bond into focused, productive uses. Though Thorn made progress, her power remained unpredictable, especially when she was upset or frightened. Thorn grew up balancing grief and hope. Every day she felt the absence of her mother, yet nature reminded her she was not entirely alone. Flowers, trees, and the earth itself seemed to offer comfort that only she could sense. Over time, she found peace in the idea that her mother's spirit might live on in the life around her. When Thorn turned 16, her father, Sashi, returned unexpectedly. He had not known about her until receiving a letter revealing that Rose had been PR'd before her death. The revelation devastated him, and he reached out to Thorn. She felt torn between a desire for connection and resentment for his absence. The years after his return were tense. Thorn could not fully accept him at first, but she began to soften as she recognized genuine remorse in his eyes. Slowly, they rebuilt a complicated but meaningful relationship as they each navigated their grief. Thorn's bond with nature, called verdant bond, was more than control, it was connection. People often said the earth knew her name. Trees, vines, and wildflowers seemed to listen to her. She could sense the presence and emotions of nearby plants, feeling trees like storytellers and vines like attentive companions. This gave her an awareness of her surroundings that others often missed. Her manipulation of plant life allowed her to grow and shape vines, roots, thorns, flowers, and moss from existing flora or by encouraging growth from soil and seeds she carried. The effectiveness of her power relied on concentration and energy. Overuse left her physically exhausted. With disciplined training, Thorn learned to soothe injured plants and accelerate growth in barren places, and her calming influence showed limited potential to aid others indirectly. In moments of intense emotion or pivotal growth, Thorn showed glimpses of greater potential. She might call forth vast root systems, create living shields or armor from vegetation, encase herself in a protective blooming cocoon, or blend into the natural environment to become nearly invisible. Her abilities had limits. Concrete or barren terrain weakened her bond, and if she lost focus, overgrowth could become unstable. Strong emotions could trigger sudden surges in plant activity, and prolonged, large-scale use drained her stamina and led to dizziness or fainting. Her trademark techniques reflected her connection to the natural world. In one, vines would snap up from the ground to bind or strike. In another, blossoms and petals burst forth to create a fragrant, blinding distraction. Roots could rise to form a defensive dome or carry her across difficult ground, and in moments of intense feeling, a powerful release of emotion could awaken nearby flora in an animated chorus of movement and color. Thorn moved through life carrying the memory of loss, the support of her family, and a living bond with nature that shaped who she was and who she was becoming. Thorn Achigasaki character breakdown. Power 3-5. Thorn's quirk lets her shape and influence plant life, but it is closely tied to her emotions. When she is calm and focused, plants respond with precision and strength. When her emotions surge, they can overreact and become difficult to control. This emotional link is both a gift and a limitation. At her best, Thorn can call vines, flowers, and healing herbs to aid allies. At her worst, her lack of full mastery prevents her from reaching her peak potential. Strengths: control over plants, nature manipulation, summoning vines and flowers, medicinal. Uses of plants. Weaknesses: unpredictability, emotional instability, risk of unintentionally harming others. Speed 3-5. Physically, Thorn is not exceptionally fast, but she compensates by using her quirk to shape the battlefield. She can entangle opponents, form barriers, and slow attackers by calling roots and vines. In natural environments she has an advantage, but open spaces expose her limited raw speed. Strengths: rapid quirk response, using plants to block or trap, maneuvering through natural terrain. Weaknesses: direct physical speed, slower in open fields. Technique 4-5. Thorn's skill with plants is advanced. She understands growth patterns, acceleration, and structural uses. She can grow barriers, weave defensive shields, shape thorns into tools, and coax herbs to heal. Her techniques are precise and often tactical, though strong emotions can complicate execution. Her connection to plant life is deep, placing her among the more capable nature-based users. Strengths: expert quirk control, tactical use of environment, precise plant shaping. Weaknesses: struggles under pressure, tendency to overcomplicate strategies. Intelligence 4-5. A sharp mind aids Thorn both academically and practically. Growing up in a family flower shop gave her extensive botanical knowledge and a practical understanding of herbs and healing. She learns quickly and adapts well, especially when solving problems related to her quirk. Her perceptiveness also helps her read others' emotions and respond appropriately. Strengths: quick learning, botanical expertise, problem-solving, perceptive. Weaknesses: can be overly analytical and indecisive at times. Cooperativeness 5-5. Thorn thrives in teams. She is empathetic, supportive, and hardworking, often prioritizing others' needs. Her warmth and optimism lift those around her, and she collaborates readily. She is beloved for her willingness to help, though this can lead her to sacrifice her own well-being. Strengths: team player, compassionate, dependable. Weaknesses: may neglect herself, sometimes overly trusting. Additional attributes. Emotional stability 3-5. Her quirk's dependence on emotion makes emotional control a constant challenge. Calm focus grants her precision. Intense feelings can make plants unpredictable. She is learning to channel emotions constructively, showing steady growth despite setbacks. Social skills 5-5. Thorn forms deep bonds easily. Her kindness and optimism make her approachable, and she often diffuses conflicts through understanding. She listens well and is usually a calming presence, though her trust can be exploited by others. Creativity 4-5. Her manipulation of plant life often takes on an artistic quality. Thorn finds inventive ways to use flora for defense, healing, and aesthetics, though she sometimes lets creativity overshadow practicality. Crush Shuto Todoroki. How it started. Their first encounter took place during a joint training session between UA students and civilian trainees. Thorn was struck by Shuto Todoroki's quiet presence and careful confidence. His calmness contrasted with her usual cheerful energy and drew her in. Watching him balance opposing forces in his quirk reminded her of her own struggles with control. She admired how he moved through those challenges with quiet determination, admiration, and respect. Thorn admired Shuto not only for his combat ability but for the emotional battles he carried. Having experienced her own loss with the death of her mother in a fire, she felt a sympathetic understanding of the burdens Shuto bore because of his family. She saw beyond his reserved exterior to a person who held vulnerability and a desire to grow. Those qualities deepened her respect for him. Why she liked him? Thorn's feelings went beyond admiration into a desire to support and protect. While she typically offered warmth and brightness, she felt compelled to be a steady presence for Shuto, helping him heal from past wounds as much as he helped her learn control. Her attraction was rooted in empathy and the shared experience of working through inner conflict. Quiet moments and growth. Thorn continued to train and grow, learning to balance technique with emotion. She used her botanical knowledge to refine her abilities and to support teammates. Her interactions with Shuto remained grounded in mutual respect and a shared commitment to becoming better heroes. When emotions rose, she focused on breathing and small rituals with plants to steady herself. When circumstances required action, she combined ingenuity and empathy to protect others and contribute to the team. Overall, Thorn is a compassionate, creative hero in training whose connection to plant life is powerful but tied to her inner state. She brings teamwork, botanical insight, and steady moral support to any group. Her relationship with Shuto is one of quiet mutual understanding and encouragement, motivating both of them to face their challenges and grow. Thorn is intrigued by how Shuto is always so composed yet quietly vulnerable beneath the surface. In her eyes, he is both strong and fragile, someone who does not seek validation from others but strives to improve for his own sake. She admires that inner strength and finds herself drawn to him in a way she has not been drawn to anyone else. At first, Thorn struggles with conflicting emotions. Her natural warmth and optimism make her want to help Shuto break out of his shell, but she often feels he is too distant for her to reach. She sometimes worries that her brightness will clash with the weight he carries. Despite that, she keeps staying near him, offering small acts of kindness, complimenting his strength, sharing quiet moments. She does not expect anything in return, but she hopes that her presence can offer comfort. Shuto notices Thorn's genuine care and unwavering positivity, which contrast with his own reserved, conflicted demeanor. He is not someone who easily opens up, yet he grows fond of Thorn in subtle ways. He appreciates her ability to see past his stoic exterior and values her kindness. Over time, Shuto comes to rely on Thorn's presence and her ability to bring light to moments when he feels the past closing in. They find rhythm in small shared moments. During group training exercises, Thorn and Shuto are often paired together. Thorn's versatility with plants combined with Shuto's precision becomes an unexpectedly effective combination, their teamwork producing coordinated maneuvers that feel seamless. Thorn enjoys challenging Shuto to think outside the box and admires how their styles complement one another. After intense training or missions, Thorn sometimes sits beside Shuto in silence. They do not speak much, but she offers a steady, comforting presence without pressuring him to open up. The silences between them feel more comfortable than awkward. Thorn frequently gives sincere compliments about his growth and fighting style, always with respect and kindness. Those small assurances are rare in his life, and they matter to him more than he initially realizes. Thorn often wonders whether Shuto can truly accept someone like her, full of energy and emotion, into his life. She fears her brightness might clash with his calm stoicism. Still, her feelings are rooted in something deeper than admiration. She sees someone who has been hurt and is trying to become better, and she wants to be part of that journey. Her hope is that, over time, he will come to see her as an anchor who helps him navigate his past while bringing light to his future. Thorn is protective of Shuto in a gentle way. She does not push him to speak, but she is always available to listen or offer a peaceful moment. Her desire to shield him from the weight of his history and to show him that warmth can be steady guides her actions. Shuto's care remains mostly silent, but he treasures Thorn's consistent kindness, someone who does not demand anything from him and who offers support freely. Thorn's quiet gestures, like leaving a flower after a difficult day or ensuring he rests after a tough mission, do not go unnoticed. Thorn thinks of Shuto as a piece of winter wrapped in the warmth of a fire, frosted on the outside but warm within. She wants to be the one who helps him soften the edges. Sometimes she worries she will never get him to open up, but she resolves not to give up because he deserves someone who cares for him, even if he does not yet believe it. Denki Kaminari is a different kind of presence in Thorn's life. Their first encounter began with a light-hearted moment in the halls of UA. Thorn complimented how bright Denki's hair looked in the sunlight. Denki, in his usual goofy way, joked that his quirk gave him extra shine and then sparked a small electrical display, causing Thorn to laugh aloud. Her laughter made Denki grin broadly. Thorn appreciates Denki's positive energy and his willingness to bring levity to tense moments. His ability to make others smile contrasts with Thorn's own grounded focus on kindness, and his carefree attitude complements her outlook. Thorn respects how Denki stays upbeat even when things go wrong and admires the resilience beneath his humor. His warmth and genuineness make her feel comfortable and remind her that it is okay to relax and enjoy the moment. Denki is drawn to Thorn's balance of calm and positivity. He would likely respond to her interest with playful, light-hearted attempts to impress her, using his quirk for harmless displays to make her laugh. He notices her compassion and how her presence improves the moods of those around her, and he wants to be someone she can rely on as well. During team training, Denki's quick reflexes and Thorn's plant manipulation create an unexpected but powerful combination. Their teamwork highlights how different strengths can come together to form something greater than the sum of its parts. Thorn's ability to control nature allowed her to help direct the flow of Denki's electricity, creating a symbiotic duo. They found themselves laughing together during exercises, which strengthened their connection. Denki often teased Thorn about her serious nature and tried to get her to lighten up. He sometimes faked tripping over his own feet or made overly dramatic reactions to get a smile out of her. After a tough day or a setback with her quirk, Denki offered comfort through silly jokes and light-hearted conversation. He never pressed her to talk about what was bothering her, but he was always there to make her feel less alone. Thorn thought of Denki as like the sun in a room full of clouds, always brightening things up without even trying, and she admired that about him. She also felt she could spend an entire day with him and still laugh, because he made everything feel easier even when things were hard. Backup, Ijiro Kirishima. Thorn first met Kirishima during a group training session. His energetic, loud presence contrasted with Thorn's more serene nature, but what caught her attention most was his unshakable confidence and drive to improve. Kirishima's resilience in the face of adversity left a lasting impression on her. She admired how he encouraged others to embrace their strengths. Thorn found Kirishima's unwavering confidence deeply appealing. She respected his loyalty and bravery and loved how he stood by his friends. His ability to take criticism and use it to become better resonated with Thorn, who also constantly strove to improve. She valued how he embraced his own rough edges and turned them into something admirable. His optimism and support inspired her to be more confident in herself. Thorn was drawn to Kirishima's steadfast nature and his belief in friendship. She felt he would always have her back and appreciated how genuine he was. In return, Kirishima would likely admire Thorn's gentleness and persistence. He would respect her strength in facing life's difficulties and aim to make her feel empowered and proud. Kirishima would be flattered by Thorn's interest and would find her respectful nature endearing. He would make an effort to show how much he valued her as a person and a friend, constantly trying to cheer her up and reminding her of her potential. His enthusiasm and warmth would likely make Thorn feel safe, and he would not hold back when expressing how he felt. Key moments between them included difficult conversations after challenging missions, when Kirishima's focus on improvement inspired Thorn to keep fighting. He often offered combat training tips to help Thorn strengthen her physical abilities alongside her quirk, teaching her how to integrate her powers into her fighting style. They also shared casual bonding after long days, talking about life goals and hobbies. Thorn found comfort in how down-to-earth and humble Kirishima was when offering advice without expectation. Thorn thought of Kirishima as like a rock-solid and unyielding someone who made it easy to believe that everything would be okay. She believed he was the kind of person who would help build something great, and she felt that was what she needed, someone who would help her grow and give her a push when necessary. Key themes in Thorn's relationships were clear. With Denki there was a light-hearted, goofy energy and a foundation of fun and laughter where Thorn could let loose and enjoy simple moments. With Kirishima there was strength, resilience, and support, emphasizing loyalty and growth. Thorn felt empowered by his steady encouragement. Fun facts about Thorn Uchigasaki. Thorn had a secret passion for flower arranging. She found it calming and therapeutic, enjoying the way different combinations could tell small stories in each bouquet. When overwhelmed or confused, she took long nature walks to clear her mind, often wandering into nearby forests or parks and letting her quirk interact with the environment. Her favorite plant was the sunflower, which she associated with strength and positivity and said made her feel embraced by warmth. Thorn noticed that when she was having a bad day, plants around her seemed to wilt or close up, so she learned to associate her emotions with the state of nearby greenery and tried to stay positive when possible. When Thorn became very emotional, her quirk could surge and cause rapid plant growth. Once, an argument with a friend caused vines to burst up and create a chaotic scene. She worked to keep her emotions in check to avoid unintended disturbances. Thorn grew up with her grandmother and picked up a few plant-based superstitions, such as the belief that a found four-leaf clover brought good fortune. If she found one, she kept it in a small notebook. Though more often seen in a flower shop or training, Thorn had a hidden talent for cooking and loved making vegan meals using ingredients from her grandmother's garden. Her specialty was a lavender lemon sorbet that was a hit at family gatherings. When she was with friends, Thorn enjoyed singing at karaoke. Despite being quiet most of the time, she had a surprisingly good voice and liked belting out a few favorite pop tunes. Denki and Kirishima often encouraged Thorn to sing with them, especially when they were all in high spirits. She usually joined in, smiling as the music lifted the mood around the shop. Thorn had a special bond with birds and often had a few visit her while she worked. Their presence comforted her, and she spoke to them as if they understood. Once, she found an injured sparrow and nursed it back to health. Every morning Thorn followed a ritual of greeting the sun and meditating among her plants. This practice helped her center her thoughts and start the day positively. She believed the plants responded to her energy and that it was her way of connecting to her quirk. When Thorn wanted to feel empowered, she wore a green flowing dress embroidered with flowers that symbolized her connection to nature. She called it her nature goddess look, and it made her feel at peace with herself. Thorn adored her grandmother's homemade flower-flavored sweets. From rose petal jam to violet cupcakes, she had a sweet tooth for anything floral and sometimes used her quirk to help grow ingredients for these treats. She loved spicy foods but could not handle too much heat. Every time she ate something too spicy she would get red-faced and ask for a glass of milk. While working at the flower shop and honing her nature-based quirk, Thorn secretly dreamed of becoming a healer. She often helped out at her uncle's clinic, learning basic medical care and imagining a future where she used her connection with nature to help people. Thorn had a guilty pleasure for nature documentaries. She loved learning about ecosystems and plant life, and these programs inspired her to deepen her connection to the natural world. Despite her usually calm demeanor, Thorn genuinely loved surprises. She got excited when someone planned something fun for her, especially if it involved her quirk, whether a surprise garden party or a flower arranging contest. Thorn was obsessed with sunsets and believed each one offered an opportunity to reflect on the day and recharge. She often took evening walks to watch the sky transform. Thorn often said she grew where she was planted but could not do it alone. She believed everyone needed a little sunshine to bloom. She reminded herself that she could not control everything, but she could control how she grew. She thought even the thorniest rose had its beauty and that when life felt like it was withering, sometimes one simply needed to find their roots again. Thorn accepted she could not change the past, but she planned to keep planting seeds for a better future. She believed sometimes the only way to heal was to let nature do its work and to let things grow at their own pace. Thorn acknowledged that people might hurt others, but that did not mean someone had to stop blooming. She learned that even the toughest storms passed and that the garden often looked more beautiful afterward. Thorn understood that not everything she did would be perfect and that nature did not rush, so neither should she. She observed that some people might step on flowers without noticing, but that did not stop them from growing. The world seemed too big to let fear prevent reaching for the sun. Thorn accepted she could not always control her surroundings, but she could control her reactions and chose to keep growing even when it was hard. She believed every petal, leaf, and branch was a part of who she was, and she felt proud of that. Thorn insisted that being soft did not mean being weak and that a flower could be a force of nature. She appreciated that some of the most beautiful moments came from the unexpected, like flowers blooming in surprising places. Thorn admitted she might not be perfect, but like a plant she would always keep reaching for the light. She noted that planting a garden sometimes required getting her hands a little dirty. Nature taught her patience, and she understood that the strongest trees did not grow overnight. Thorn recognized she may not have chosen her life, but she could choose to grow from it. Finally, she found a kind of peace in knowing that everything had a season, even hardship. Kana Virea, age 38, born November 17, is a world-class fashion designer and head of Furedo Atelier, a renowned couture house known for daring designs, cork-enhanced fabrics, and ethically sourced materials. Her status is civilian. Kana's designs blend traditional Japanese and Mexican silhouettes with hypermodern aesthetics. She incorporates cork-reactive textiles fabrics that respond to heat, light, or touch and subtly influences hero costume fashion. Her personal wardrobe favors structured, minimalist designs in deep jewel tones or monochrome, with an emphasis on texture and form. Personality. Kana is poised, sharp, and relentlessly composed, a woman of vision who thrives in high-pressure environments. She speaks in precise words, listens more than she talks, and carries herself as if every room is a runway. Known for her discerning eye and icy professionalism, she rarely lets her emotions show. With her children, that composure frays into a controlled distance. She cares deeply but expresses it in practical, measured ways rather than warmth. Instead of embraces, she offers tailored jackets and hand-sewn gloves. She prepares them for the world rather than shielding them from it. When they cry, she analyzes. When they succeed, she critiques before she praises. It is not cruelty but the way she knows how to love. She is driven, enigmatic, fiercely loyal, and emotionally armored. Quirk, terramorph, emitter environmental. Kana can manipulate Earth's soil, stone, and minerals and plant life, but not in chaotic bursts. Her power is about structure, shaping, and precision. She molds terrain like clay, coaxing vines into lacing patterns, hardening bark into armor, or entwining roots through rock to form intricate sculptures or defensive barriers. Her earth and flora behave as if they were thread and cloth, stitched, sculpted, and worn. Core abilities. Stone weave. She manipulates mineral-rich soil and stone as if it were fabric, threading it through walls, reshaping floors, or reinforcing objects. She often uses this in design work. Her atelier is partially built this way. Verdant lace. She guides plants into detailed, stable forms, woven canopies, living embroidery, defensive tendrils. Earthen sculpt. She combines soil and roots to form statues, armor, or shields that are both defensive and beautiful. Support and passive uses. She grows rare fibers and minerals for her high-end clothing line, self-repairing vines, heat-sensitive leaves, stone dust-dyed fabrics. She can cultivate specialized materials with cork-enhanced properties, such as thread that conducts cork energy or bark-based armor panels. Limitations. Kana must be in contact with natural materials, stone, soil, plants, or seeds because she cannot generate them. Overuse causes her hands and arms to ache intensely, like an artist cramping after a marathon. Her sculpting requires focus. Quick, crude moves are possible, but beautiful, functional work takes time and mental clarity. She cannot manipulate metal directly, though she can push stone around it or entwine plants through it. Aesthetic touch. Her arms are often lightly stained with earthy pigment or tiny ivy scars from her work. Her atelier carries the faint scent of loam, moss, and dried flowers. Quirk stat breakdown. Power. 3-5. Her quirk is not built for brute force, but the strength she summons through earth and plant manipulation is solid when needed, especially defensively. Precision over destruction. Speed. 2-5. Methodical and deliberate. Attacks and creations take time to sculpt properly. Technique. 5-5. Absolute mastery. She shapes terrain and flora with the control of a calligrapher. Her quirk use is elegant, refined, and often breathtaking. Intelligence. 4-5. Perceptive and strategic. She is a renowned businesswoman and artisan whose mind is always analyzing people, spaces, and materials. Cooperativeness. 1-5. Kana does not play well with others. She values control, aesthetic, and personal vision and is more likely to take over than collaborate. She will protect people she loves, but on her terms. Appearance. Kana is a vision of composed power. At 5 feet 4 inches, 162 centimeters, she carries a gravity that makes her feel taller, the still center of a storm. Her mocha-colored skin is smooth and richly toned, with a sun-warmed glow. Her long, thick, naturally curly hair frames her face and cascades down her back, catching faint blue in the light. She often wears it loose, a wild softness that contrasts with her strict demeanor. Occasionally, a few curls fall across her brow and she never brushes them away. Her emerald green eyes are sharp and luminous, always watching. They hold depth and weight. When she locks eyes with someone, it feels like quiet judgment or silent protection. Her features are strong and symmetrical: high cheekbones, a slightly aquiline nose, and full lips usually pressed into a neutral, unreadable line. Her face rarely reveals feeling, but when it does, the smallest flicker speaks volumes. Her hands are elegant and long-fingered, slightly calloused from years of work, a reminder that beauty and grit live side by side. Clothing. Kana dresses like a queen of marble and thorns, untouchable, composed, and devastatingly elegant. Her civilian wardrobe is a masterclass in sleek, sculpted precision. Every piece is tailored to her body with an artist's eye, form-fitting, fluid, and graceful. White is her canvas, the color of memory, reverence, and subdued power. Her white bodysuits, skin-tight dresses, and fitted silk trousers feature high necklines, long sleeves, and seams that frame her form with architectural precision. The materials are natural, often created through her own quirk and interwoven with plant fibers, earth-imbued silks, and living threads of moss or quartz. Minimalist but never simple, her clothing controls presence rather than revealing it. Status and motivations. Kana values control of her craft and the world she shapes. She protects those she loves in precise, intentional ways, and her work is both her language and her legacy. Each piece of Kana's wardrobe is built to feel grown rather than made, blending the elegance of nature with the cool precision of design. Though her palette is subdued, the textures speak volumes: matte silks that catch light with each movement and fabrics woven in earth tones of olive, moss, and bark that hint at the organic work within her. Occasional cutouts at the waist or back suggest vulnerability without revealing it, a quiet homage to loss and the strength she has built in its place. Kana's outfits are as unyielding as her will. She favors white because her late husband once told her she looked most beautiful in that color. White for her is no longer innocence. It is silent strength, grief, and memory wrapped in control. Even in mourning, she commands every room she enters. Her clothing does more than fit, it embodies her. Formal attire for Kana is an ethereal embodiment of strength and remembrance. For formal occasions, she wears floor-length gowns of high thread count silk that catch light and shadow with every subtle motion. The white fabrics shift with pearlescent tones that deepen along the contours of her body, and the dresses carry subtle geometric patterns, tiny threads of green and gold woven like veins of mineral through the cloth. The gowns hug her silhouette without constraining it. High collars, long sleeves, and a structured bodice create an aura of regal composure, while a thigh split allows movement that hints at the poise underneath. Delicate leaf embroidery in silver thread lines the collar and sleeves, and a faint latticework suggests the intertwined growth of life and loss. For formal affairs, her hair is swept into an elegant updo that keeps her striking black curls controlled yet alive. Finely spun metallic threads form small vine-like accents in her crown, giving the style a subtle glow, as if she carries a piece of the earth with her. Her footwear is tall and minimalist in marble white with thin metallic accents that echo the earth tones of her gown. She sometimes carries a slender silver cane engraved with flora and fauna, an ornamental statement that reflects meticulous strength and quiet remembrance. Even in private, Kana's wardrobe retains its signature grace. Her black pajamas are refined and comfortable, a satin-silk blend that reads like liquid shadow. The buttoned long-sleeve top is slightly oversized for ease without losing structure, and fine silver vine embroidery traces her sleeves. Tailored pants allow freedom of movement while remaining elegant. An almost invisible seam catches light to reveal a deep emerald hue, a subtle nod to her late husband's favorite color for her. She goes barefoot at home, feeling the coolness of the earth beneath her feet, and sometimes drapes a long woven blanket over her shoulders for warmth. A single silver bracelet may rest on her wrist as a small, personal reminder of something precious. Kana's clothing speaks of control, composure, and refined beauty. Whether in public or private, her appearance is a quieter reflection of her strength, her grief, and an enduring connection to the natural world. Kana's memories of her father Kazu are fragmented and cold. Kazu, now deceased, was a villain in every sense and largely absent from her life, emotionally distant and often physically unreachable. The earliest years she can recall are filled with the sound of her mother's tears and the heavy atmosphere of a home where she felt excluded. Kazu was present in the world he shaped but not present in any meaningful way for his daughter. He treated her as an accessory to his schemes, indifferent to her needs. That neglect left an indelible mark. The silence and disdain of her father forged a quiet rage in Kana and a deep yearning for stability and warmth. His absence shaped the kind of parent she strives to be, even as she struggles to show affection in the ways her children need. Her mother, Esmeralda Furedo, remained the warm constant in Kana's life. Esmeralda lived in Mizudafu and provided compassion and steady strength through the turmoil. The bond between mother and daughter was resilient. Esmeralda's love became the refuge that kept Kana from being defined by her father's cruelty. But that bond was fractured when Esmeralda was rescued from an abusive situation and, because of the trauma she had endured, was sent away to a mental institution. Kana was sent to live with relatives, torn away from the only person who had ever shown her genuine love. The distance between them, both physical and emotional, carved an empty space in Kana's heart, one she would spend years trying to fill. Despite the pain of separation, Kana's loyalty to her mother never wavered. As an adult, Kana made it her life's mission to care for Esmeralda in every possible way. She became fiercely protective, perhaps to an unhealthy degree. Any funds or resources Kana had she offered to Esmeralda, trying to compensate for the years lost to abuse and institutionalization. Kana poured her emotional energy, her wealth, and her resources into ensuring her mother was happy, safe, and comfortable, as if she could erase the past through acts of care. An underlying guilt fueled Kana's need to provide for Esmeralda, an unspoken belief that perhaps she could have done more, that maybe if she had been older she could have prevented her mother's descent into the institution or stayed by her side during those years. That guilt festered and drove Kana to be overbearing, at times controlling, as she offered her mother everything she thought she had needed. Still, Kana's love for her mother remained unyielding, shaped by regret, longing, and an unspoken promise to protect her no matter the cost. Yuno Fureto, Kana's older brother, was alive and living in a private home in Mizudafu. Their relationship was far from perfect, but it offered Kana a source of quiet comfort and tenderness unlike the strained connection she had with their younger brother, Kyafuyu. Yuno was soft-spoken, gentle, and reserved, much like Esmeralda. He had long been burdened by a future vision ability that allowed him to see fragments of what might come. The constant mental toll of that foresight led him to live a reclusive life, and although he could care for himself, Kana insisted on making sure he had a peaceful home. Kana's concern for Yuno went beyond obligation. She had always been protective, especially when it came to him. His ability to see potential futures often brought him painful visions he did not want, and Kana reacted by encouraging him to take things slowly and reminding him he deserved peace. She fostered his relaxing hobbies, his pet rats, which she had quietly grown fond of, and his vegetable garden, where he found solace in tending to life. Kana admired his ability to find joy in the small things, even when she was frustrated that he withdrew too much from the world. Yuno found comfort in the mundane tasks of gardening, watching plants grow, and caring for his pets. Kana admired these quiet pleasures and smiled at his excitement over a new vegetable or when he spoke with a genuine softness only he possessed. Though he rarely expressed it directly, Yuno deeply appreciated Kana's care and her insistence that he rest. In her own way, Kana acted as a grounding force for him, reminding him that not everything needed to be weighed down by their family's burdens or by the pressure of knowing what might happen. His foresight made him cautious. He often could not tell whether a vision was inevitable or only one possible outcome. That uncertainty made him more introverted, preferring the sanctuary of home and the comfort of small routines. Kana, despite sometimes fearing the implications of his visions, never hesitated to shelter him from unnecessary stresses. Unlike his relationship with their younger brother, Kana's bond with Yuno was nurturing and balanced. He rarely questioned her decisions, and in his quiet way he provided emotional support that Kana held onto, especially when her own emotions threatened to spiral. Yuno's presence offered calm and solace, a small island of stability in their complicated family life. Kaifuyu Furedo, their younger brother, was alive, but their relationship with Kana was strained at best. He lived apart and was not close to Kana. Where Kana had been raised under the strict guidance of their uncle and learned to embody composure and duty, Kaifuyu took after their father, Kazu, rash, hot-headed, and impulsive. He never fit the carefully curated image their family wanted to present and instead often challenged authority and acted rebelliously. Their personalities clashed from childhood. Kana's stoic reserve met Kaifuyu's aggressive impatience, and neither understood the other. Kana dismissed his behavior as a nuisance. Kaifuyu could not accept Kana's emotional distance. Growing up, arguments became routine, with Kana criticizing his lack of self-control and Kaifuyu calling her cold and distant. Over time their bond withered. As adults, their lack of communication only worsened. Kana largely ignored his existence, considering his wild nature beneath her, and Kaifuyu had little interest in maintaining a relationship with his reserved sister. Family gatherings, when they happened at all, were tense affairs. Kana and Kaifuyu refused to engage with one another on any meaningful level. Kana rarely knew where Kaifuyu was, and Kaifuyu likely did not care to know where she was. The friction between them reflected a shared family history they could not escape. Both were products of a dysfunctional home, though in different ways. Kana's disdain for Kaifuyu's recklessness echoed the chaos their father had brought into their lives, and Kaifuyu's resentment of Kana's emotional reserve traced back to the neglect and coldness they had both endured from their parents. Unresolved anger and frustration lay at the heart of their relationship. Each sibling was bitter about the path the other had taken. Kana's effort to maintain control and preserve the family's name opposed Kaifuyu's need to break free from restraint, creating a wall neither seemed interested in dismantling. For Kana, Kaifuyu's presence was a reminder that the family had never been built on harmony but on fractured ideals and broken relationships. If she thought of him at all, it was as an irritant to be ignored. Kaifuyu had moved on, focusing on his own life without any real desire to reconcile. Ryuga Suzuki husband status, deceased. When Kana first met Ryuga, she was distant and wrapped in her own world. He had appeared to her at first as just another idealistic young hero chasing glory. He did not stand out by feats or bravado. Instead, he was nervous, often fiddling with his hands and avoiding prolonged eye contact. That awkward, humble nature seemed out of place in the high-stakes world they inhabited, but there was something else about him that caught Kana off guard. Kana noticed that Ryuga smiled in a way that lit up the room. His gentle, genuine smile briefly pierced the armor she had built around herself. His vulnerability and sincerity contrasted sharply with the controlled, imposing persona she had cultivated since childhood. Over time, his presence softened her edges. Ryuga's nervous steadiness became a source of comfort, a place where Kana could be less guarded. He offered a quiet support and a sense of home she had rarely allowed herself to accept. Their relationship formed around that contrast. Kana, strong and reserved, Ryuga, soft-spoken and earnest. He did not replace the complexities of her past, but his kindness made space for something quieter within her. His death left a void that altered her in ways she did not fully express. The memory of his smile and the security he provided remained with her, a gentle, persistent presence in the years after his passing. Alec Furato's son status. Alive whereabouts, studying forensic science at university. Kana and Alec's relationship was defined by a quiet understanding rather than overt displays of affection. They did not share the intimacy Kana had with her own mother, and Alec did not seek his mother's attention in a demonstrative way. Their bond was muted, conveyed through unspoken gestures and practical support. Kana, distant by nature, made sure that Alec had what he needed: financial support and stability for his studies without intrusion. She provided in the way she knew how, as a silent protector. Alec did not demand attention. He accepted his mother's care as a given and pursued his own path. He respected her reserve, and Kana, though often emotionally unavailable, recognized his independence. Watching him follow his ambitions filled her with a quiet, private pride even if she did not voice it. Their connection required few words, they simply understood one another. Serafina Furato daughter status. Alive whereabouts, currently with the League of Villains. Serafina, once believed dead, had weighed heavily on Kana with grief and confusion. Her apparent loss left a deep ache, but now that Serafina had resurfaced and become entangled with the League of Villains, Kana's reaction was unexpectedly muted. Relief at her daughter's survival did not blossom into joy. Kana's response was complicated and restrained, shaped by years of loss, fear, and the cautious distance she maintained from those she loved. The grief she once felt had slowly faded into indifference, as if the emotional weight of Sarah's past life and death had been washed away by the realities of Kana's current situation. Kana understood what the League of Villains was capable of, and she understood the path Sarah had chosen. More than anything, she saw Sarah's choices as the result of a complicated web of influences that had surrounded their family. Kana did not truly blame her daughter. She recognized the roots of rebellion, the pull of desperation, and the dark allure of freedom that had driven Sarah. Still, Kana held a power over Sarah that she rarely used but that was always there. With a single word she could make Sarah's crimes vanish, erase evidence, and rewrite official records. No matter what Sarah had done or where she had gone, Kana could clear her name in an instant. Sarah knew this, and perhaps deep down she was aware that her mother remained her last option, a potential escape from the consequences of her choices. The offer was never extended purely out of mercy. It was a pragmatic gesture born of the kind of love Kana had always shown her children, present when needed, even if complicated. Sarah had never been one to simply accept easy solutions. There was a rebellious fire in her that continued to burn despite her chaotic past, and though Kana's offer hung unspoken between them, Sarah was reluctant to take the easy way out. She also knew that if things went too far, her mother would be there to pull her back from the brink. Perhaps, when the weight of her choices became unbearable, Sarah would reach for the lifeline Kana had provided. For Kana, the offer was more than a matter of redemption. It reflected the emotional cost she had paid in silence. She had allowed her children to make their own choices, for better or worse. But if Sarah ever sought escape from the path she was on, Kana would be ready to rewrite the future, even if it meant sacrificing a part of herself to keep her daughter safe. Kōhei Horikoshi, son. Status: alive. Whereabouts: unknown. Kōhei and Kana shared a bond that was both intense and complicated. They were cut from the same cloth, possessing similar traits that made their connection both a source of strength and a point of contention. Like Kana, Kōhei was fiercely independent and unwilling to back down from his beliefs. Their shared stubbornness often led to clashes, neither willing to admit fault, both too proud to concede ground. Those clashes were never fatal. They fought and argued, pushing each other's buttons, but underneath the tension was a deep-seated understanding born of likeness. They knew one another inside and out, strengths, flaws, and the motivations that drove them. Even when they disagreed, there was comfort in knowing they were similarly unrelenting. Despite their differences, Kana and Kōhei were there for each other when it mattered. Dependability ran deep between them. If one was in trouble, the other would drop everything to help, even if pride had to be set aside. It was not about romantic love but about respect and an unspoken loyalty rooted in shared identity. Kana rarely expressed emotion openly, but with Kōhei her fierce protectiveness shone through. She would not coddle him or soften her approach, yet she would always have his back. Kōhei, though distant at times and prone to disappearing without a trace, understood this without needing to be told. His independence was part of who he was, and Kana accepted it as such. Alana Furedo, daughter, status, alive. Whereabouts, UA High School. Alana, Kana's second daughter, was perhaps the child who confused her most. Where Kana navigated the murky waters of gray morality, Alana chose the path of a hero, a choice that both disturbed and fascinated Kana. Heroism reminded Kana of her late husband Ryuga, whose idealism and desire to make the world better were qualities she had admired but also seen as naive. Alana's determination to right wrongs and make the world a better place struck a chord in Kana. She recognized Ryuga's spirit in her daughter's fire and idealism, and that recognition left Kana conflicted. They clashed often. Alana's belief in heroism and her desire to help others irritated Kana, who had seen the corruption and disillusionment within the system. To Kana, heroism could be a mask, and she feared Alana might be broken by the disappointments that came with it. Kana tried to keep Alana's idealism grounded, and their arguments came from a place of both love and frustration. Despite the frequent disagreements, Kana would never turn her back on Alana. No matter how much they fought, Kana would do anything for her daughter. Her love was not always expressed in words but in silent sacrifices and unwavering support from the shadows. When Alana faced danger or struggled under the heavy responsibilities of being a hero, Kana's instinct was to protect, even if that meant suppressing her own beliefs. Alana's path as a hero was something Kana could not fully accept, but her love for her daughter was too strong to let go. When they were reunited, Kana's inner conflict became more apparent. She did not know whether to embrace Alana's determination or to shield her from the harsh realities she knew too well. The tension between protecting and letting go defined their relationship, as Kana struggled with her role in Alana's life. What Kana wanted most was for Alana to be safe, even as she knew the world her daughter chose would always carry danger. Kana was left to sit in the quiet discomfort of knowing that the child she raised would never fully be under her protection again. Anithia Furedo daughter status, alive whereabouts, unknown. Kana's relationship with Anithia was complicated and unsettled. Anithia had always been the most elusive of Kana's children, disappearing for long stretches without explanation and leaving Kana to wonder whether her daughter was lost to her forever. Unlike Alana's clear path of heroism or Kōhei's rebellion, Anithia's life had been marked by secrecy and distance. Kana felt frustration at Anithia's absence, both physical and emotional, a persistent worry that was hard to put into words because Anithia had never given her much to hold on to. Their bond rested in quiet tension. Kana's love often failed to reach a daughter who had always been evasive or detached. Still, Kana kept hope that Anithia would one day return, even as she feared her daughter might be choosing to cut ties. The disappearance had left Kana with a deep sense of abandonment and a stubborn devotion that made her wonder whether Anithia was fleeing something or moving toward something she was not yet ready to reveal. Kana's maternal instinct remained, tempered by a faint resentment. How could she protect someone who kept slipping through her fingers? How could she show love when she did not know where Anithia was or if she was alive? Despite that uncertainty, Kana would move heaven and earth to find her, though she did not know how to express that desire. In some ways Anethia resembled Kana, independent and wary of being tied down, but that fierce independence left Kana with a haunting sense of loss she could admit to no one. She had offered Anethia a chance to return. Whether that offer would be accepted remained unknown. Kane Furato's son's status. Alive, whereabouts, shy. Hasakai. Kane resembled his father, Ryuga, in temperament and choice. He had joined the Shy Hasakai, the notorious Yakuza organization, carving out his place in the underworld. Kana felt a sharp mix of disappointment and frustration when she thought of Kane's path. She saw Ryuga in him the same drive, temper, and loyalty that could lead him into dangerous decisions. Despite her own complicated morality, Kana had always wanted better for her children. Kane's decision to join the Yakuza felt like a rebellion against the family that had raised him, and she found herself torn between a desire to protect him and anger at the choices he made. The world of organized crime was one she had worked to distance herself from, and seeing her son step into it with ease left her feeling helpless. Yet in quiet moments Kana could not deny the bond between Kane and Ryuga. That likeness only intensified her worry. She did not want Kane to follow the same fate that had claimed his father. Kane appeared to walk a fine line between ambition and the pull of a dangerous legacy. Despite her disdain for his lifestyle, Kana would do anything for him. She kept her offer to erase his crimes if he asked, but Kane had not taken her up on it. Their relationship was a silent standoff. Kana suspected Kane did not want her interventions and preferred to prove himself. She watched from the shadows, ready to step in if needed, even if he never asked for help. Her love for Kane was constant, expressed not in words or public affection but in subtle acts of protection, quietly available no matter how far he strayed. Toma Furato's son's status. Alive, whereabouts, unknown. Toma most resembled Ryuga at first glance, yet there was something about him that reminded Kana of herself. His outward demeanor, soft smiles, and polite manners masked a sharp, calculating mind. That innocent facade was a mask he wore to conceal his true intentions, a quality that both amused and unnerved Kana. She recognized the talent for appearing bland and unassuming while quietly shaping the world around him. Kana admired Toma's ability to maintain his mask. She had used similar tactics in the past, though she was less subtle. He seemed to enjoy the game of influence, controlling narratives without drawing attention. His tactics called to mind Kana's own navigation of the fashion world, where an elegant image often hid the workings behind the scenes. Beneath the smile, Kana saw ambition and a keen intellect that ran in the family. She understood that Toma, like her, was willing to do what it took to get what he wanted, though his methods were more subtle and therefore harder to read. She sometimes wondered what he would become once he fully embraced his nature, whether he would mirror her or take a darker path. For now, she allowed him his game, finding a mixture of worry and pride in watching him handle the world with such mastery. If he's anything like her, he will be capable of great things, though she also knows the danger of being too much like her. The world is not always kind to those who manipulate from the shadows. Though they are currently estranged, Kana never stops thinking about her son. She is curious, perhaps even a little proud, to see what Toma will do next. He is a reminder of the past, of her own struggles and desires, and part of her feels that one day, when he is ready, he will come to her. She will always be waiting, whether he seeks her approval, advice, or simply a place to return to. For now, she watches him from afar, slightly amused by the drama of it all. Itsuki Suzuki, father-in-law. Status, alive. Whereabouts, Mizudefu. Kana's relationship with Itsuki is one of resentment and disdain. On the surface, they maintain a professional, business-like partnership, but beneath that cold veneer is a deep hatred she never voices publicly. Itsuki, the patriarch of the Suzuki family and a successful businessman, is to Kana the man who allowed her husband's childhood to be filled with pain. His actions, or rather his inactions, left Ryuga to suffer under the neglect and cruelty of his stepmother, a history that shaped him into the man Kana loved, for better and worse. Itsuki's passive complicity in Ryuga's torment has marked him as a coward in Kana's mind, a man consumed by his own ambitions who ignored the suffering of those closest to him. She sees his silence as a betrayal that robbed Ryuga of a safer childhood. Her hatred is as much for what he failed to do as for what he might have done but chose not to. To Kana, Itsuki is a ghost of a man who never stood up for the people who mattered most. While he holds power, influence, and wealth, to her he is nothing more than a cowardly relic, and she looks forward to the day fate catches up with him and his influence erodes until he is gone. She imagines that day vividly, a final reckoning when he disappears from the world and his legacy is lost. Kana keeps a professional demeanor when interacting with him, but it is always strained. Beneath polite words and business dealings, a quiet fury simmers. She will never forgive Itsuki for what he allowed to happen to Ryuga, and she can never fully trust him. In many ways, Itsuki is a constant reminder of how inaction and indifference can destroy lives. Thalassa, mother-in-law. Status, deceased. Thalassa's death is a quiet, unspoken sorrow in Kana's life, despite the fact that Kana never truly knew her. Thalassa passed away when Ryuga was a boy, leaving a gap in both their lives, one filled with unanswered questions and what-ifs. Ryuga often spoke fondly of his mother, recalling her gentleness, grace, and warmth despite the hardships they faced. He said that Kana and Thalassa would have gotten along well, that they might have shared a quiet understanding as strong-willed, resilient women navigating difficult circumstances. Without ever having met her, Kana can never be sure. Even in absence, Thalassa's presence is felt in the way Ryuga spoke of her and in the strength he seemed to inherit. Sometimes Kana wonders if Thalassa could have shielded Ryuga from his painful past had she lived, if her love would have made a difference during the dark years of his childhood. There is a part of Kana that feels a subtle resentment toward Thalassa, not for anything the woman did but for not being there when Kana needed someone as well. Ryuga's memories of his mother sometimes left Kana with a pang of envy. His bond with a ghost was something Kana could never truly compete with. In the end, Thalassa remains an enigma, a woman lost to time, a memory that both haunts and comforts. Kana holds a faint hope that if their worlds had overlapped, they might have found solidarity and understanding. Akihito Suzuki, mother-in-law. Status, alive. Whereabouts, Mizudafu. The relationship between Kana and Akihito Suzuki is toxic. Akihito embodies the traits Kana despises: manipulative, vindictive, self-serving. From the beginning, Kana saw the coldness in Akihito's eyes and the way she treated Ryuga and his siblings like pawns in a cruel game. To Kana, Akihito represents everything wrong with a woman who wears a mask of civility while causing lasting harm to those who should matter most. Akihito's disdain for Kana was evident from the start. She never forgave Kana's boldness, strength, or resilience in a world that had already given her reason to be bitter. Akihito saw Kana as a threat. Kana's love for Ryuga and unwavering devotion to her family only intensified that resentment. The hatred between them could not be hidden, and it was clear Akihito would never accept Kana as part of the family. For Kana, Akihito's treatment of Ryuga and his children crossed a line she could not forget or forgive. The wounds left on Ryuga's soul and the coldness shown toward the grandchildren fueled a simmering rage within Kana. That fury finally erupted during one heated confrontation when Akihito made a particularly condescending remark about Kana's family. In a swift, decisive motion, Kana struck Akihito, sending her stumbling back and breaking the tension between them. A short, tense silence followed. The sound of the impact echoed through the room as Akihito stumbled back, stunned not just by the force of the punch but by Kana's audacity to strike her. For Kana, it was a moment of release, a bitter satisfaction in finally standing up to someone who had tormented the people she loved. For a fleeting second, Kana felt triumphant, though she also knew there was no real victory. The damage had been done long before the blow landed. Akihito never forgave Kana for that act, and Kana never showed regret. Their relationship remained toxic, with no signs of reconciliation. Kana viewed Akihito as irredeemable, convinced that her selfishness would continue to hurt those she claimed to care for, and to Kana that was unforgivable. Kana Furedo's backstory. Kana was born into a world of chaos and conflicting values. Raised by an uncle who treated the Furedo name as paramount, her early years were shaped by pride and entitlement. Her uncle, proud of the family's heritage and wealth, made sure Kana understood that she was meant to be above others in status and ability. He taught her that the family name was sacred, a symbol of strength that should never be tainted by ordinary people's actions. Her childhood was oddly privileged yet marked by emotional neglect. While her father, Kazu, pursued villainous endeavors and her mother, Esmeralda, was consumed by other battles, Kana was largely left in her uncle's care. He raised her with strict values that emphasized superiority rather than emotional guidance. Empathy and kindness were not virtues he valued, so Kana grew guarded, emotionally distant, and taught to put pride above vulnerability. When she cried or showed frustration, her uncle merely reminded her that no Furedo was meant to show weakness. As she matured, Kana began to mirror her uncle's values. She became convinced that loyalty to family mattered above all else and learned to dismiss others, holding her family name above the struggles and emotions of those deemed unworthy. This mentality continued to define her even after she met Ryuga Suzuki, her late husband. When Kana first met Ryuga, she was cold and calculating. He was a hero in training, someone who represented the very ideals her uncle had taught her to disdain. Initially she showed little interest, but his nervous energy and honest smile lingered in her mind. Ryuga was different and humble, and that vulnerability gradually won her over. Their relationship was built on contrast, Kana the stoic, proud woman from a legacy of superiority, and Ryuga the earnest, nervous man with dreams of heroism. Despite their differences, their affection grew. Ryuga came to represent more than a man to Kana. He embodied the possibility that someone of humble background could still possess great heart. Then tragedy struck. Kana had already lost much, and her relationship with her family became strained when her uncle died. His death left a strange emptiness rather than closure. She was left to carry the emotionless burden of family pride without the one who had enforced it, and her sense of identity began to crumble under the weight of that inheritance. When Ryuga died, everything she had built around superiority and detachment collapsed under grief. She tried to pick up the pieces while still shouldering the legacy her uncle had imposed. Her children, particularly Alina and Serafina, became targets of her frustration, her complicated love, and her fierce desire to protect them from the world even when her protection meant being emotionally distant or unreliable. Despite the chaos, Kana insisted on living by her own terms. Her pride in the Furedo name was both strength and weakness, and though her relationships were fraught, she would do anything to protect her family through money, connections, or a strict control over their future. In her quiet moments, she often questioned the path her life had taken and wondered whether she might have been different without those rigid ideals. The poised, reserved woman the world knew as a world-class fashion designer was, in truth, shaped by legacy, family, and grief. Marriage to Enji Todoroki. Kana did not marry for love, she married for leverage. Enji Todoroki, known publicly as Endeavor, was powerful, wealthy, and eager to secure political and social alliances late in his career. Kana was the image of elegance, poised, untouchable, and tied to a legacy that cameras and executives admired. Their marriage was one of convenience, sealed with formal ceremonies and cool, polite exchanges. For a time Kana played the part dutifully. She wore white at public events, attended galas by his side, and posed for interviews, but she never let him in. He was a path to resources and access rather than a partner. When the truth about Enji's abusive behavior, his obsession with legacy, and the family's suffering was exposed, Kana remained outwardly composed. She watched the reporting, stood, and poured herself a drink. She filed for divorce the day after the fall of the villain organization, when the hero industry was weakened and Enji's reputation lay in tatters. With the industry shaken, she no longer needed his name or money, she had built more in his shadow than he realized. The timing was precise and the legal separation proceeded smoothly. The public scandal and subsequent quiet dissolution of their marriage closed that chapter of her life. Afterward, Kana continued to navigate her world with the same guarded determination, motivated by a need to protect her family and preserve the legacy that had defined her even as she questioned it in private. She did not grant interviews. She did not defend him. She simply left. That would have been the end of it, if not for Ray. Kana had met Rei Todoroki only once before, briefly and in passing. Rei had always seemed fragile, a woman folded into her own tragedy. After everything collapsed, they crossed paths again in a quiet way, away from cameras and pity, two women shaped by cold rooms and by men who had thought they could own them. At first there was distance and a careful respect. A few soft conversations in the garden of a rehabilitation center. Shared silences over tea. Then, slowly, a warmth grew, understanding and a kind of closeness that did not demand explanations or masks. Kana never expected it, and Rei did not expect to be seen. Their connection remained private and tentative, a quiet bond born from survival and second chances. Kana still did not believe in soulmates, but she believed in healing. Rei gave her hope. Kana was known for more than her silence. She had a signature perfume line called Void Silk and a reputation in fashion as the seamstress of shadows for bold, avant-garde nightwear and gala designs. She had collaborated with top heroes to craft custom hero wear, and she kept a cat named Machi, who was more famous online than she was. In secret, she sometimes designed under a pseudonym for underground shows. Only a few people knew. She moved through rooms as if she glided precise and eerily calm even when angry. Her children said they could hear her heels before they ever saw her. She preferred bitter tea with no sugar and no honey, claiming it sharpened the tongue. She had never once broken a heel. She attributed it to posture, though she had reinforced her shoes with subtle earth manipulation. She slept with silk gloves on because her quirk sometimes shifted the soil under her house when she dreamed. Elegant knives were hidden in every room, kept clean and ready. Trust did not come easily to her. Her quirk was nature-based but not nurturing in the conventional way. Plants could grow quickly under her hand, and they could decay just as fast. She spoke 5 languages, including a private coded dialect she and her late husband Ryuga had invented at university. She kept every letter her children had ever written, rereading them when she could not sleep. Once she had destroyed an entire marble ballroom because someone called her soft like her mother. She maintained a greenhouse no one was allowed to enter, filled with rare, mutated flora she had crafted. Rumors whispered that one plant could almost seem to whisper secrets. Her signature scent mixed crushed violet, the smell of rain, and warm clay, lingering long after she left. She refused to wear perfume that had not been gifted to her. She believed scent was too intimate otherwise. She carried a locket with fragments of her late husband's funeral wreath, and she had told herself she would never remarry, insisting that once was tragedy and twice would be mockery. Small irritations revealed her. She could not stand loud chewing and corrected offenders with a single look. She had a sharp, uncompromising voice. During an argument with her daughter Alana about the path of a hero, Kana reminded Alana that she had been born into privilege and urged her to act like it. When someone accused her of being heartless, Kana responded that her heart was simply more disciplined than theirs. Standing before her late husband's portrait with a glass of wine, she had explained that she wore white to remind herself that she had buried him in it. When a League informant insulted one of her children, Kana warned the informant that if they repeated their words, she would make sure they were silenced and never a bother again. She accepted the cold reputation and said that stone preserved more than fire ever could. She offered refuge quietly. To Sarah she had said a home was available no matter what others said, promising to make threats vanish if needed. She compared Cain to his father with a dry observation about stubbornness and poor decisions. To Kurai, after they clashed, she suggested that they were cracked mirrors who fought because they recognized themselves. While gardening with her hands deep in dark soil, she said that the earth remembered everything, and so she buried the things she wanted to forget. The day she left him, she told Endeavor that he had married silence, but silence could become thunder, and that she had been holding back a storm. In a rare conversation with her brother Kaifuyu, she noted that he had been raised on rage while she had been raised on silence, and that difference explained much. When Alana returned injured from a mission, Kana told her that if she insisted on dying for the world, she should at least make sure the world remembered her name. To Rei, while tending her hair, Kana said that Rei did not need fire to burn. She needed a woman who had had enough. To her son Alec, leaving for university, Kana conveyed that she did not say much because she did not need to, but that she would always be watching, always funding, always there. Asked about her success, Kana explained that she had turned grief into fabric and woven sorrow into silk, warning others not to mistake her gowns for softness. When Serafina returned, Kana observed that people could call someone a villain as they had called her worse, and yet she still sat on silk and made the law bend. To Cain she acknowledged his inherited kindness while cautioning that kindness in their world was often carved away. To Yuno during garden talks, Kana likened herself and Yuno to balance. Yuno saw futures, while Kana buried pasts. After an explosive fight with Kurai, she told him that he was her fury in a younger body and needed to learn to wield it or risk being consumed. Passing Ryuga's old hero poster, she admitted to herself that she should have burned it years ago but that some ghosts deserved to haunt. These were the contours of Kana's life, a woman who left everything and found a quiet companion in Rei, a designer and mother who wore silence like armor, who moved through gardens and ballrooms and greenhouses with the same precise calm. She kept the letters, the knives, the gloves, and the locket. She kept her distance and now, a fragile new softness that held the possibility of healing. A brief, private warmth had entered her life, and she allowed herself to believe in hope. Anthea Varea was a small, enigmatic girl who seemed fashioned from moonlight and petals. She was 15 years old, born on October 15th, and her zodiac sign was Libra, which made her gentle, empathetic, and driven by a quiet desire for harmony. She stood 4 feet 11 inches tall, slight but with a presence that suggested inner strength. Her SXL orientation was demisexual. She formed deep emotional bonds rather than quick attachments. Anthea carried herself with a still, observant grace. She spoke rarely, and when she did her words were soft and full of unexpected insight. People often mistook her silence for indifference, but she felt things deeply and preferred to hide that feeling behind calm observation. She was soft-hearted yet guarded, loyal to the few she allowed close. If someone she loved was threatened, her gentle exterior hardened into resolute protection. She looked as if she belonged in a dream, pale skin that seemed kissed by starlight, deep moss-green eyes that held quiet sorrow and quiet strength, and snowy white hair that curled into vintage ringlets at her shoulders. Her curls framed her face with an otherworldly softness, often a little tousled as if touched by wind or sleep. She favored layered, faded pastels and earthy tones, loose sweaters, long scarves, muted florals, and vintage accessories, an unassuming, ethereal style that let her blend into both gardens and alleyways. Anthea lived as a vigilante who kept to the margins of society. She did not seek recognition or affiliation with official hero agencies. Instead, she moved quietly between rooftops and forgotten places, helping the overlooked and the hurting in ways licensed heroes often could not. Preferring subtle intervention and protective tactics, she avoided direct confrontation when possible. When innocents were in danger, her calm demeanor became a quiet but fierce force. She wore practical layered coats that allowed her to slip through shadow and leaf, and she left behind only trailing vines, wildflowers, or blooming ivy as her calling card. Known to some by another name, Anthea Furedo, she was whispered about in alleyways and overgrown ruins as the harmonious shade, Lyrica. The vigilante Lyrica moved like a lullaby given form, slipping between shadows with a presence marked by sudden stillness in nature and a faint echo of melody on the wind. Her voice could soothe or command, and her control over flora made her both protective and unpredictable. Those she saved remembered her as a ghostly figure with a voice like a dream and eyes like a forest at dusk. Lyrica embodied a balance of opposing traits, soft and strong, empathetic and relentless, siren and earth. Shade described her elusive nature. She rarely appeared where she could be easily seen, preferring dusk, ivy, and the shelter of trees. Her symbol was a white lotus entwined with a sound wave, representing calm, life, and the power of her voice. Common signs of her presence included drifting flower petals, vines coiling around buildings, and flickering lights in the forest. Her combat style combined sound and plant life. Her songs produced emotional and sensory effects, calming, confusing, or luring, and in response the plants reacted, growing or shielding as if guided by her notes. She did not confront conflict head-on. Instead, she wrapped around it like ivy, overwhelming danger with grace until it unraveled. She fought for the wounded and the overlooked, using forgotten wild spaces as both shield and weapon. Lyrica believed that even in silence the forest sings, and she carried that belief in her actions. She moved as a protective spirit for those who could not protect themselves, blending melody and nature into a quiet, persistent justice. Her presence left behind small signs of life in places that had been broken, and her resolve remained rooted in empathy and the pursuit of balance. She blends stealth and surprise with elegant, fluid motion, like a waltz through the woods. Her vigilante outfit, called the Harmonious Shade, lets her disappear into overgrowth, ruins, or moonlit mist, both beautiful and ghost-like. The silhouette is a high-waisted, vintage-inspired asymmetrical cloak dress with flowing layers and an irregular, leaf-like hem that mimics petals or ivy trailing in motion. The fabrics are soft, matte, movement-friendly, and whisper-quiet. The muted palette of forest green, faded lavender, and ashen white carries an ethereal undertone, with occasional accents of soft gold thread where music notes, vines, or runes are embroidered subtly into the lining. The upper body features a form-fitting sleeveless bodice with curled vine motifs along the chest and ribs, designed like engraved armor but kept light and flexible. Transparent mesh sleeves in soft gray lavender slip over the arms with thumb holes, shifting and shimmering like falling mist. A vintage-style high collar can be folded up for disguise or folded down to reveal a scarf-like neckline. The lower half combines flowing skirts split at the side for agility with lightweight leggings patterned like bark or leaves. Hidden pockets inside the skirt and belt hold seeds, powders, and small tools used with her quirk. Her footwear is soft, laced boots with flexible soles that stay quiet on most terrain. The heels are carved like twisting vines and reinforced with steel toes for defense. A short, asymmetrical cloak clasps over one shoulder like a fallen petal and drapes across her back, merging with the skirt in motion. A mask of interwoven dark leaves and glass covers the upper half of her face, small mirrored pieces glinting in moonlight like reflective eyes. A vine charm choker, a gift from her mother or found in an overgrown place, serves as a focus for calming melodies or controlling stronger spells. She wears ear cuffs shaped like blooming flowers or musical clefs on one ear. In this guise she appears mythic, half-fae, half-phantom, belonging to ruins and forests, unseen until the melody begins and the vines rise. In civilian life, Anthea Furado carries a quiet, dreamy presence with a timeless softness, like someone from a sepia-toned memory humming in a garden at twilight. Her aesthetic is soft, cottagecore meeting vintage academic with a hint of forest spirit. She favors a cream or sage green blouse with puffed sleeves, delicate lace at the cuffs, and embroidered wildflowers around the collar and hem. The buttons are charmingly mismatched wood, pearl, or one that looks like dried flower resin. A-line midi skirts in faded plum or mossy green flow gently and hide deep side pockets where she absent-mindedly stores leaves, petals, or notes. Dark tights sometimes reveal a subtle floral or vine print up close. She layers with a cropped cardigan or knit vest in oatmeal or dusky mauve and swaps to an oversized, soft trench-style coat in colder weather that sweeps behind her and smells faintly of cedar and lavender. Her lace-up ankle boots are worn leather, well-loved but cared for. In warm weather she sometimes wears woven sandals or goes barefoot in the grass when alone. Accessories include a pressed flower pendant or a locket containing a small preserved leaf her mother once enchanted, and a satchel filled with herb bundles, a sketchbook, pressed leaves, and occasional sheet music or field notes on flowers. Simple ear studs or cuffs shaped like ivy, pearls, or glass beads appear often, and she tucks a living sprig behind one ear, rosemary, lavender, or a white bloom that hums faintly when her quirk stirs. In civilian form she looks as if she fell out of a dream, quiet, earthy, and timeless. For formal occasions she becomes a figure dressed in moonlight and moss. Her main gown is deep emerald, cut to move like leaves in the wind with a slight iridescence that catches hints of silver and blue like dew on foliage. The off-shoulder neckline gathers softly, and delicate gold-embroidered vines curl around the bodice. The skirt falls in layered panels, each like a petal, with faint translucent overlays that give a ghostly, graceful trail. A gold leaf belt, crafted like intertwining ivy and songbirds, cinches the waist. Tiny bell-like charms hidden in the hem give the faintest chime when she walks, a quiet reminder of her musical influence. Subtle embroidery of musical notes and blooming flora stitches into the train as if her past and power trail behind her. She pairs the gown with long sheer gloves in pale sage or champagne tulle, vine patterns crawling up the arms, and earrings shaped like small crescents or dew-kissed flowers in gold and opal. A circlet of twisted gold and ivory blossoms sits lightly in her hair. Her shoes are pale gold or moss-toned heels with ribbon ties around the ankles and quiet soles. She prefers not to echo unless she intends to be heard. Her shoulder-length, curly white hair is parted to the side and softly tucked with dried flower pins and a few shimmering strands of golden thread. Her makeup is dewy and natural soft green around the eyes, a touch of rosy blush, and a honeyed lip tint. In this formal guise she looks like the spirit of a long-forgotten forest melody, distant, warm, and a little melancholy. People said she looked as if she were not wearing a dress but a poem. Anthea's pajama set, called Whispers of the Woods, consisted of a loose, long-sleeved sleep shirt in a soft cream or pale sage tone made from breathable cotton or bamboo fabric. A delicate vine pattern was embroidered along the cuffs and neckline in muted gold or soft moss green, and tiny mother-of-pearl buttons ran down the front, often left half open for comfort. A faint stitched symbol, a tiny flower wrapped in a treble clef, marked the pocket as a quiet nod to her dual legacy. The matching drawstring pants were soft, wide-legged, and flowing, with a subtle pattern of leaves and faint musical bars visible only in the right light. The drawstring ended in little wooden beads, smooth and natural. On warmer nights, Anthea chose a simple tank top in dusty rose or pale gray and mid-thigh cotton shorts with the same gentle embroidery motif. Her slippers were plush, open-back designs shaped like sleeping foxes or mossy pebbles, a gift from a grandmother figure who wanted her to stay warm and grounded. Sometimes she wore a hand-stitched knitted cardigan with tiny ivy leaves down the arms, and a lightweight silk-lined sleep mask embroidered with silver stars, though she rarely used it unless she needed true peace. Before bed, Anthea braided her curls loosely to keep them from tangling, often weaving in a dried flower or two. She slept curled up with soft music or the sounds of nature faintly in the background, a comfort more than a need. Her pajamas felt like a forest lullaby, gentle, natural, and quietly magical. She appeared as someone the stars watched over while she dreamed. Quirk name: Verdant Melody. Quirk type: hybrid, siren and earth-based. Anthea's verdant melody allowed her to communicate with, manipulate, and influence nature, primarily plants and the earth, through the resonance of her voice. Her sound waves interacted with the environment, producing harmonious or discordant effects depending on her tone, pitch, and rhythm. Using her voice as a conduit, she balanced nurturing and control, with each element responding to the subtle music she produced. Her abilities included harmonic manipulation, where singing or even spoken tones could direct plant growth and affect the earth. By humming or singing at a specific pitch, Anthea could encourage rapid plant growth so that vines twisted and bloomed to her will. Vines could grow to hold or impede adversaries in a stylized, non-graphic manner, flowers could form to heal or create barriers, and roots could spread to reinforce structures or hinder movement. A strong, focused note could cause thick flora to rise and form shields that blocked attacks. Thorned vines could act as a deterrent to push back opponents without graphic injury. She could also command roots to shift and emerge to obstruct or restrain movement, or adjust the ground beneath to create gaps or upheavals that altered the battlefield. The siren aspect of her quirk allowed Anthea to influence the mood and behavior of creatures and people within the range of her voice. A lullaby-like melody could calm or induce a trance-like stillness. For enemies, it could cause disorientation or temporary immobilization. For allies and wild creatures, it brought a sense of peace and cooperation. Deeper, slower tones amplified her control over earth and plants, drawing roots and vines closer or creating gentle winds, while higher, quicker notes stimulated wild growth or encouraged animals to act protectively. Her voice could also create battlefield confusion, disorienting opponents and making it hard for them to maintain focus or direction. These effects were not infallible and could backfire if her pitch or emotions wavered. Anthea's connection to nature was symbiotic. The healthier the environment, the stronger her powers. In lush, plant-rich areas she gained greater control, while in barren urban spaces her influence waned. She could affect stone and concrete, but with much less nuance. She could speak to plants through her voice, sensing their health and asking them to grow, move, or assist her. The more attuned she was to the earth, the more she could feel its pulse, the condition of the soil, and the emotional resonance of those nearby, and her body responded to these vibrations. In rich, living areas she could call on plants to aid in gradual regeneration, drawing nutrients from the soil to soothe physical and emotional wounds over time. The core of verdant melody was vibrational resonance. Her voice functioned like a tuning fork for the earth and its flora. By adjusting frequencies, she fine-tuned her power. A low, steady hum manipulated roots and vines, while higher notes could produce a swirling shower of petals or disorient opponents. The effectiveness of her quirk depended on proximity and tonal precision. The closer her voice in both physical distance and pitch to the target, the more focused the effect. She could modulate volume to either softly guide plant life or project a larger, more dramatic force. Her limitations included vocal strain. Prolonged or intense use could fatigue her voice, reducing her effectiveness and impairing fine control. Environmental dependency also limited her power in heavily urbanized or barren areas, where plant life was sparse. Emotional instability affected the reliability of verdant melody. Anxiety or overwhelm could make her abilities erratic, producing unintended bursts of growth or unexpected effects. Anger or fear could cause chaotic, uncontrolled growth, resulting in vines lashing out wildly or the earth shifting in unpredictable, stylized ways. When she was calm and focused, her quirk was far more stable and reliable. Her control depended on being in tune with her surroundings. If her emotions or focus were off, she could produce a discordant tone that made the plants go wild or become unresponsive. To truly connect with nature, she had to feel in harmony with the earth around her. In peaceful moments, she could use her voice to coax the natural world into gentle motion, causing plants to sway in pleasing patterns or sending soft melodies along the breeze. In conflict, she could unleash disorienting plant maneuvers, blossoming vines that confused opponents, barriers of foliage to protect herself, or roots that tripped and restrained adversaries in a non-lethal, almost choreographed way. Her voice could also create a quiet, telepathic-like link with plants and nature spirits, allowing silent exchanges of ideas and strategies when needed. Her power leaned toward influence and disruption rather than brute force. When emotionally in sync and singing clearly, she could affect the battlefield in meaningful ways, especially in prolonged or emotionally charged encounters. In chaotic, fast-paced skirmishes without preparation, her abilities were less reliable. Her voice needed to carry, and nature needed to be nearby for her full potential to manifest. She was exceptionally fast and agile, a necessity of life as a vigilante who strove to remain unseen and untouchable. She moved like wind through trees, graceful, quick, and unpredictable. Years of navigating rooftops, forests, and tight urban spaces had made her lithe and evasive. She relied on momentum-based movement and music-driven dodging to stay one step ahead. Her technique was refined in melodic control and terrain manipulation, though she was not classically trained in combat. She improvised, blending instinct with melody, and could layer harmonics to guide multiple plants or influence emotions subtly. In direct hand-to-hand confrontations, she was more elusive than conventionally skilled. She was highly perceptive and emotionally intelligent, reading people and moods with ease, an advantage for someone whose quirk depended on emotional and melodic nuance. She was an intuitive strategist who learned quickly from mistakes and adapted her songs with elegance. She often seemed to know more than she said, a quiet observer with a sharp mind. Because she operated as a vigilante, she struggled to trust others and rarely worked well in teams. She preferred to act alone and disliked taking orders, making her hard to read until she felt truly safe. She bonded slowly, but once connections formed, she protected them fiercely. Ryuga Suzuki, hero named Siren, was deceased. His quirk, Siren Song, had allowed him to soothe, command, or disorient through controlled resonance and sound waves, making him a formidable presence in both combat and rescue. Anthea loved her father deeply, and their bond was bittersweet. Ryuga had been charming, expressive, and bold, someone who filled a room with light and who taught her breath control, pitch, and emotional intention through sound skills that later shaped her own abilities. He often called her his echo. He was affectionate and proud, but also loud, demanding, and prone to performing even at home. For a soft, introspective child, his constant intensity could feel overwhelming. He encouraged pride in her voice but sometimes pushed too hard, expecting her to follow his path as a hero when she wanted to find her own rhythm. He did not always understand her silences, and she did not always understand his need to shine. After his death, she felt grief mixed with guilt. She missed him and still heard his lessons in her songs, but she sometimes resented the way his legacy overshadowed her. He was not her favorite parent, yet his absence was the one she felt most loudly. Kana Furedo was alive and had no reported quirk. Kana was a woman shaped by restraint, sharp features, cool glances, and a reserved manner. Many perceived her as distant, but Anthea noticed the small openings of softness others missed. While her elder sister clashed with Kana's cold nature, Anthea slipped into the quiet spaces. Kana left a touch of tending a vine, a shared look toward an approaching storm. Kana did not coddle or sing lullabies, but she braided Anthea's hair in silence, left tea where she knew her daughter would find it, and pressed leaves into her notebooks without fanfare. When Anthea's powers first appeared, Kana observed how the plants leaned toward her voice and cautioned that she must learn not to speak carelessly. It was not unkind, it was Kana's way. Despite the emotional distance, Anthea admired her mother for a quiet strength that held like bedrock. She believed she saw fleeting flickers of regret and longing beneath Kana's reserve. They did not speak often and rarely said "I love you," but when Anthea sang near her mother, Kana stayed in the room, and Anthea knew that presence was enough. Alec Furedo, alive but with unknown whereabouts, possessed the quirk resonance, which allowed him to generate concussive force through harmonic vibration. He could produce shock waves with a hum or a snap, destabilizing the ground or structures. His control had been erratic in youth but became powerful when focused. Alec and Anthea grew up in a heavy silence filled with unspoken things. They shared blood but not much else. He was older by 7 years, louder, and more grounded. Anthea was quiet and at ease with gardens rather than sparring. To Alec, she was a shadow who followed too closely and hummed to things that did not answer back. He was not cruel, only distant and unsure how to protect what he did not understand. He assumed her softness made her fragile. She thought his silence was a wall she could not climb. Their interactions were mostly surface level. He helped her up when she fell and allowed her to sit nearby on good days, but he never truly saw her. Then one day he left, saying it was time to carve his own path without explanation and without a goodbye. Anthea never heard from him again. There were no letters, no rumors, only a lingering presence in family photos and the occasional flash of his voice in her memory. Despite everything, she did not hate him. She only wished he had said something, anything. Sometimes, when the wind was right, she hummed an old song he used to whistle and wondered whether he would recognize it. Serafina, Sarah, Furedo. Status, alive. Whereabouts, unknown, rumored to be affiliated with the League of Villains. Quirk, Siren Serafina can emit powerful hypnotic sonic waves with her voice that influence emotions, disrupt concentration, and temporarily immobilize or disorient opponents. The louder and more controlled her voice, the stronger the effects. Scenario 1. A knight is assigned to protect an original character. They are outwardly at odds and forced into awkward cooperation. Roles may be reversed. Scenario 2. An original character from a humble background encounters a prince or princess who unexpectedly demands that they serve in their household. Roles may be reversed. Scenario 3. An original character serves as a special maid or butler to a prince or princess. Their relationship grows complex. One of them later becomes PRGNT, and their families object, even taking extreme measures against the servant. The servant and their partner ultimately flee together. Roles may be reversed. Scenario 4. A pirate king once captained the Sirius. The current captain of the series is a runaway princess. A tyrant queen rules a kingdom, and another princess is believed dead but may be connected to the League. 2 mages join the crew and a healer acts as the ship's doctor. A long-lost princess joins as navigator. Their pasts and loyalties collide in the life at sea. Scenario 5. An original character or their counterpart is turned into a child during a villain attack and loses most memories except childhood recollections. Someone volunteers to care for them. Scenario 6. While on patrol, a character encounters a lost child who resembles them. The child says they lost their mother and needs help. After reuniting the child with their family, it is revealed that the child is actually theirs. Scenario 7. A married couple discovers a PRDNCY some years into their marriage. The announcement leads to new tensions and possibilities. Scenario 8. A couple's sleeping child is kidnapped by a villainous group, prompting a desperate rescue. Scenario 9. A villainous partner and their spouse have a child. During a heated argument about the child's future, the child wakes and, frightened by a raised hand, reacts in a way that triggers a latent quirk for the first time. Scenario 10. A snow day introduces a young child to the wonders of snow. Warnings and darker plots are woven into some scenarios, including secrets, stalking, and past abductions. One plot follows a friend who disappears after dating someone new, prompting a search that uncovers a dangerous secret. Another features a single parent whose child adores a pro-hero. Repeated, staged encounters lead to complicated attachments. Years after an escape from an abductor, a survivor receives a bouquet on their doorstep and realizes someone has found them. Scenario: soulmate use. A classic arm-writing tradition appears among friends who send messages to each other using temporary ink. In another version, a black handprint marks the first touch of a soulmate. Placements vary. In a different twist, the first words a soulmate speaks appear as writing on the arm. There is also a chibi soulmate you featuring a small, fragile companion who cannot speak and communicates with soft squeaks. Care for the chibi is essential. Scenario: mafia and family secrets. A long-married couple with children live happily until one partner's secret life as a mafia leader is discovered, forcing a confrontation when the other learns the truth. Throughout these scenarios, characters face emotional trials, shifting loyalties, and the consequences of secrets. Conflicts are framed as tense, anime-style confrontations rather than graphic violence, with emphasis on feelings, choices, and the bonds that keep people together. Scenario: gang rescue. OC had been dating Crush for a few months when OC was kidnapped by a rival gang. OC was frightened, and Crush tracked them down and rescued them, then calmly explained the situation. Roles can be reversed. Scenario: mysterious gifts. A few weeks after a night they could not fully remember, OC began receiving expensive gifts. Those gifts were secretly from Crush, who had quietly taken a liking to them. Roles can be reversed. Scenario: ranch meeting. Crush was rounding up horses while OC fetched water for their own horse. They met, got along immediately, and talked until nightfall. When coyotes started howling, Crush became concerned and moved to keep OC safe. Roles can be reversed. Scenario: town sickness. A sickness began to plague their small town. Crush worked in the fields and tried to keep the PRGNT OC away from the ill in fear of losing their partner and unborn child. When Crush returned, they discovered that OC had fallen ill and their condition was uncertain. Roles can be reversed. Scenario: courtship and request. After a PRD of secret courtship, Crush decided it was time to ask OC's parents for their hand in marriage. The moment was tense and hopeful as they waited for an answer. Roles can be reversed. Scenario: sheep riding contest. Crush and OC entered their child in the annual sheep riding contest. The child had looked forward to it all year, but then came down with the flu and could not attend. A quiet disappointment settled over the family. Scenario: loss and grief. OC and Crush had married and, a year later, welcomed a child. Shortly after the birth, OC died as the result of an attack. Years later, their child returned home in tears after being teased for not having a parent and asked Crush why they were different. Scenario: child's illness and family strain. Crush and OC worried when their child developed a serious illness that was first mistaken for a normal flu. As the child underwent treatment, tensions rose between the parents and arguments became frequent. The child, believing they were the cause, ran away in an attempt to make the family whole again. Scenario: betrayal and healing. After several months of a high-profile relationship, OC discovered Crush had been unfaithful. Heartbroken, OC fell into a PRD of depression. A supportive figure, backup Crush, confronted the situation publicly and slowly helped OC recover while the fallout damaged Crush's public standing. Scenario: gender swap quirk. While confronting a villain or hero, OC and Crush were struck by a quirk. They believed nothing had happened until they woke the next morning and found themselves the opposite gender. They learned the effects would last 24 hours. Scenario: alternate doppelgangers. Crush and OC were on a date when they encountered two people who looked exactly like them but of the opposite gender. Those others explained that a quirk had transported them there, creating a bizarre mirror encounter. Scenario: gender bend introductions. The gender-swapped versions of their friends were introduced with new names. Ryuga became Ryu, Kana became Kazuo, Alana became Ayato, Akane became Amain, Melanie became Masaaki, Itachi became Itsumi, Sashi became Sachi, and Thorn became Tadashi. Scenario: quirkless world. A quirk transported OC and Crush to a world without quirks. They discovered an academy where the material was unfamiliar and their classmates had no powers. Stranded without a clear way home, they relied on the help of their now quirkless peers. Scenario: captured and rescued by selves. While walking home after a long day of work, OC and Crush were captured and taken to an unknown place. They were unexpectedly saved by versions of themselves from that world. Scenario: consequences of an encounter. After a brief personal encounter with someone who turned out to be obsessed, OC became PRGNT and raised the child as a single parent. Later, gifts began appearing at the doorstep for both parent and child. Roles can be reversed. Scenario: confession from a villain. During an encounter with a villain, the villain revealed an unhealthy obsession with OC. This scenario is intended for private handling. Roles can be reversed. Custom scenarios. Readers are invited to create their own scenarios and adapt roles as desired. Alana Esmeralda Furedo carried herself like a light in motion, graceful and noble in bearing. Her name suggested brightness and elegance, and she lived up to that meaning with quiet confidence and a vivid inner life. Close friends called her Lina, Crazy Girl, Little One, or Lurker, and she sometimes used the surname Furedo as a tag among trusted companions. She moved between roles depending on the story she inhabited, ranging from a trainee hero to a civilian or vigilante when the situation demanded. Her age varied with each role, typically appearing between 16 and 22. She identified as female and used she/her pronouns. She was bisexual and described herself as biromantic, open to emotional connections with people of any gender while leaning toward men in attraction. Alana was known for a fiery determination. She believed that hard times did not create heroes but revealed the hero within, and she often described herself as having a fire inside that aimed to become a volcano-driven and powerful rather than merely flickering. Those who knew her saw both humor and intensity in her. She enjoyed bold music and could switch from playful to serious in an instant. Her tastes and themes flowed with the moods she favored. She listened to songs like Shut Up and Drive by Rihanna, Savage Daughter by Sarah Hester Ross, and Who Is She by I Monster. Music shaped the atmosphere she brought into a scene and guided the rhythm of her actions. Alana kept her close relationships small but meaningful. She had preferred people who understood her quirks and a few cherished friends who could call her by the nicknames she allowed. She was cautious around enemies and protective of family ties when they mattered to the story. When details of costume or class were needed for a particular role, Alana adapted them to fit the world she was placed in, from a hero outfit during training to casual civilian attire or simple pajamas off-duty. Her abilities, strengths, and drawbacks shifted with each incarnation to preserve balance and dramatic tension. A short pause bridged any shifts in scene or role, allowing her presence to settle before the next moment unfolded. This kept her arc consistent while letting each interaction breathe.